Sarah knelt beneath the blood moon with thousands of wolves watching. She had entered the moon trial for one reason: to keep a 5-year-old child out of Madame Voss's hands. When Alpha King Damon ordered her to expose her throat, Sarah obeyed, knowing what usually came next. His claws touched her skin. She closed her eyes and waited. But the king suddenly stopped. Something in the Wolfless Omega standing before him had triggered a reaction even Damon could not explain, and his next act stunned the entire gathering. Chapter 1. The Wolfless Omega. Omegas were supposed to serve. They were supposed to be the weakest part of a pack, born to obey and disappear quietly into the shadows. That was what Sarah Ashwood had been taught. The morning everyone discovered she could not shift was the morning the life she knew ended. Sarah was 16 when the other young wolves of Silvercrest gathered beneath the full moon for their first transformation. 12 adolescents stood inside the ceremonial clearing, trembling with anticipation, while their parents watched proudly from the surrounding stone circle. Sarah still remembered the moonlight against her skin. It had felt silver cold, almost like a promise waiting to be fulfilled. Then that promise shattered. One after another, the young wolves transformed, bones cracked and reshaped. Human skin disappeared beneath waves of brown, gray, black, and silver fur. Triumphant howls rolled through the forest, as each new wolf celebrated the birthright they had waited years to claim. Sarah waited for the same thing to happen to her. Nothing did. She remained standing beneath the moon in her human body. Painfully human. Humiliatingly human. Her father, Beta Corwin of the Silvercrest Pack, stood among the watching families. Sarah saw confusion cross his face first, then disgust. Her mother, the same woman who had once braided flowers through Sarah's hair and sung her to sleep, turned away as though Sarah had already disappeared. Wolfless, someone whispered. The word moved through the clearing like poison. Wolfless. Broken. Defective. Her father refused to speak to her for 3 days. On the 4th, he summoned Sarah to his study. It was a room filled with the scent of pine wood and old leather, a place where she had once felt safe. But that morning, her father would not even look directly at her. "You have brought shame to this bloodline," Corwin said, his voice stripped of emotion. "A Beta's daughter should be strong." Sarah stood motionless. Her father finally looked at her. "You are nothing. You will leave Silvercrest before dawn. If you ever return, you will be treated as a rogue and hunted accordingly." Sarah wanted to scream at him. She wanted to demand an explanation. She wanted to beg her mother to stop him. Instead, Sarah raised her chin. "Yes, father." That had been 7 years ago. Now 23, Sarah lived on the edge of werewolf society, in a place everyone simply called the outskirts. It was a collection of crumbling buildings where rogues, half-breeds, and wolfless omegas struggled to survive. The supernatural world had little use for anyone who failed to fit inside its rigid hierarchy, so the unwanted had built a life together in this forgotten corner of the territory. Sarah rented a tiny apartment above a butcher's shop. Keeping it required 3 jobs. During the day, she scrubbed floors at the pack hospital. At night, she served tables in a diner used mostly by lower-ranking wolves. Whenever she had a few spare hours, she accepted sewing and mending work. Her hands were always rough. Her muscles always ached. Exhaustion followed her everywhere. But Sarah had learned how to wear exhaustion like armor. The other Omegas sometimes whispered about her. The Ice Queen. The Omega who never cried. Sarah let them whisper. She had stopped wasting tears the night her own father threw her away. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday, everything changed. Sarah was walking home after her hospital shift, her shoulders aching from hours spent scrubbing surgical floors, when she heard crying. A child. The sound came from the narrow alley between an abandoned textile factory and an old grain warehouse. Even rogues avoided that alley after dark. Sarah should have kept walking. Survival in the outskirts depended on learning when something was not your problem. But the crying was small. Frightened. Sarah stopped. Then she turned into the alley. A little girl sat curled against the brick wall. She looked about 5 years old. Tangled dark hair framed a face streaked with tears, and her thin arms were wrapped tightly around her knees. The moment she saw Sarah, terror filled her eyes. "Please," the girl whispered. "Please, don't hurt me." Something tightened painfully inside Sarah's chest. She crouched several feet away, keeping her movements slow. "I won't hurt you, sweetheart. What's your name?" The child hesitated. "Lily." "Lily, that's a beautiful name." Sarah kept her voice gentle. "Where are your parents?" Fresh tears rolled down Lily's cheeks. "Mama got sick. She stopped breathing. Then the bad men came. They said I had to go with them, but I ran away. I've been hiding." Her voice broke. "I'm so hungry, and it's so cold." "Shh, it's all right." Sarah carefully reached toward her and brushed a strand of tangled hair away from Lily's face. The girl flinched but did not retreat. "You're safe right now. Do you have anywhere else to go? Any family?" Lily shook her head. "Another orphan. The outskirts was full of them. Children whose Omega parents had died or vanished. Children packs refused to claim because they were poor, unwanted, or wolfless. Children left to survive alone because the laws considered them inconvenient." Sarah looked at Lily. Then she made a decision that would change everything. "Come home with me." Lily blinked. Sarah gave her a small smile. "I don't have much, but I have food, and I have somewhere warm to sleep. You can stay with me until we figure out what to do." Hope appeared in Lily's eyes so suddenly that it hurt to see. "Really? Really? You mean it?" "I mean it." Lily launched herself into Sarah's arms. The desperate force of the embrace almost knocked Sarah backward. Sarah held the child close and immediately felt how thin she was. Lily's ribs pressed sharply through the threadbare fabric of her dress. How long had she gone without eating? Sarah carried her home. She heated soup, gave Lily bread, and watched until the child had eaten everything she could manage. Then Sarah tucked her into the apartment's only bed and made herself a sleeping place from blankets on the floor. That night, she lay awake listening as Lily's breathing slowly settled into peaceful sleep. And Sarah felt something she had not felt in years. Purpose. For the next 2 weeks, she cared for Lily. Sarah used nearly all of her tiny savings to buy the child decent clothes and enough food to begin restoring the weight she had lost. She braided Lily's hair every morning and told her stories before bed. Slowly, the frightened little girl changed. She began smiling, then laughing, then trusting. Sarah knew the arrangement could not last forever. Her already limited money was disappearing fast. But she would find a solution. She always had. Then came the night of the blood moon. Sarah was closing the diner when the front door opened. Silas stepped inside. Sarah recognized him instantly. Silas was an enforcer from the nearby Iron Paw Pack. Everyone in the outskirts knew the enforcers. They maintained territorial order, hunted rogues, made arrests, and acted as the Alpha's iron fist. Silas looked directly at Sarah. Cold unease slid down her spine. "Sarah Ashwood." His voice carried through the empty diner. "You are harboring stolen property." Sarah went still. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The child. Lily." Silas moved farther into the room. Behind him came 4 more enforcers, 5 wolves in total. Every one of them radiated enough predatory dominance to make the air feel heavier. "She belongs to Madame Voss," Silas said. "You've been hiding her for 2 weeks." Madame Voss. Sarah's stomach turned. Everyone in the outskirts knew that name. Voss controlled a child labor operation. Orphaned Omegas were taken into her factories and forced to work for scraps of food. If they failed to meet their quotas, they were beaten. "She's a child," Sarah said, fury shaking her voice. "Not property. She's an Omega without a pack. That makes her available for claim." Silas's smile showed too many teeth. "Madame Voss holds legal ownership. By interfering, You violated territorial law. Sarah stared at him. What happens now? Exile from the outskirts. Silas paused. Or you can submit to a moon trial. Sarah's blood chilled. She had heard rumors about the moon trial. It was a brutal tradition from the old days, supposedly abandoned decades earlier. Apparently, some territories still used it quietly. During a blood moon, an accused wolf could be brought before the Alpha King for judgment. The accused offered their throat in absolute submission. If the king chose mercy, the accused survived, but often as a slave. If he did not, Sarah already understood. I'll take the trial. The words left her mouth before fear could stop them. Silas's eyebrows rose. You understand what you're choosing? Yes. The Alpha King has no reputation for showing mercy to wolfless Omegas. You'll die. Then I'll die. Sarah lifted her chin. When? Tomorrow night. The blood moon reaches its height at midnight. Something shifted in Silas's expression. Almost respect. You've got courage, Ashwood. Foolish courage, but courage. He turned toward the door. We'll collect you at dusk. The enforcers left. Sarah stood alone inside the diner. She allowed herself 30 seconds to fall apart. No more. Then she wiped her face, went home, and held Lily while the little girl slept. Sarah knew what the moon trial would probably cost her, but territorial law protected Lily while Sarah's trial remained unresolved. If Sarah could buy enough time, the child could escape Madame Voss forever. Some lives were worth dying for. Chapter 2. The Blood Moon Rises. Sarah spent what she expected to be her last day of freedom preparing carefully. She woke before sunrise and watched Lily sleeping. She memorized the curve of the child's peaceful face and the way her little fingers wrapped around the worn stuffed rabbit Sarah had bought at a second-hand shop. When Lily finally opened her eyes, Sarah had oatmeal waiting. Warm oatmeal with honey. The last of what she had. Lily, breakfast. The child sat up and rubbed her eyes. Then she studied Sarah's face. Sarah? Yes? Are you okay? You look sad. Sarah forced a smile. I'm fine, sweetheart. I just have somewhere I need to go tonight. Mrs. Chen downstairs is going to take care of you for a while. Mrs. Chen was one of the very few people Sarah trusted. She was an elderly Omega who had lost her wolf during a rogue attack 30 years earlier. What she lacked in shifting ability, she made up for with more kindness than most wolves Sarah had ever known. Earlier that morning, Sarah had gone to her apartment and explained everything. Mrs. Chen had listened without interrupting. Then the older woman wrapped Sarah in a crushing embrace. You're a fool, she whispered. Sarah almost laughed. Mrs. Chen tightened her arms around her. A beautiful, brave fool. I'll keep the child safe, no matter what happens to you. Now Lily frowned across the breakfast table. How long will you be gone? Forever, Sarah thought. She swallowed. I'm not sure. Lily's lower lip trembled. But I need you to be very brave for me. Can you do that? The little girl nodded solemnly, although tears had begun filling her eyes. Will you come back? Sarah's throat closed. She moved around the table and knelt in front of Lily. Taking the little girl's face between her hands, Sarah looked directly into her eyes. Listen carefully. No matter what happens, I need you to remember something. Lily stared at her. You are not property. You are not worthless. You are brilliant and beautiful, and you deserve to be protected and loved. Sarah's voice shook. Never let anyone convince you otherwise. Promise me. I promise, Lily whispered. They spent the entire day together. Sarah took Lily to the small park on the edge of the outskirts and pushed her on the rusted swings. Later, she bought the child a piece of candy from the corner shop even though Sarah could not afford it. Every minute felt precious. Temporary. Like trying to hold water between open fingers. As dusk painted the horizon with blood red and gold light, Sarah walked Lily downstairs to Mrs. Chen's apartment. The child suddenly clung to her. This time, Lily cried openly. Somehow, she understood that this goodbye was different. Sarah wrapped both arms around her. "I love you," she whispered into Lily's hair. "Never forget that." "I love you too." Sarah gently loosened Lily's fingers from her clothes. Then she turned and walked down the hall. She did not look back. If she did, she knew she would not be able to keep moving. Lily's sobs followed her all the way down the stairs. Silas and the enforcers arrived at sunset. They did not bind Sarah. They did not drag her through the streets like a criminal. Instead, the 5 wolves formed a silent escort around her and guided her beyond the boundary markers of the outskirts and into official pack territory. Sarah had never traveled this far into Ironpaw Land. Even with death waiting ahead, she could not ignore the differences. The buildings were strong and well-maintained. Street lamps actually worked, throwing pools of warm light onto clean roads. Families moved through the evening. Children played outside. Wolves with intact animals lived ordinary lives without wondering whether tomorrow's meal would exist. It was the life Sarah had once been born into, the life she had lost, the life Lily deserved. They walked for more than an hour before reaching sacred ground. The ceremonial clearing was ancient. Massive standing stones ringed it, their surfaces carved with symbols older than written language. Above them, the blood moon was already rising. Huge. Crimson. Sarah's heartbeat pounded against her ribs. The clearing was filled with wolves. Hundreds. Perhaps thousands. Every rank had gathered to witness the trial. Sarah immediately recognized the hierarchy. Alphas and powerful families occupied the front. Lower-ranking wolves stood behind them. Omegas were pushed toward the edges. Everywhere Sarah looked, faces watched her with curiosity, contempt, or both. At the center of the clearing stood a raised platform made of white stone, and on that platform stood Alpha King Damon Blackwood. Sarah had never seen him before. Very few ordinary Omegas ever had, but no introduction was necessary. Power radiated from him with almost physical force. Damon was tall and broad-shouldered, built with lean muscle and the controlled grace of a predator. His hair was midnight black. His amber gold eyes appeared almost luminous beneath the blood moon. He was beautiful in the way dangerous things could be beautiful. Untouchable. Deadly. Alpha King Damon Blackwood, ruler of the Northern Territories. Descendant of a bloodline so ancient that other alphas bowed before it, and Sarah was about to place her life in his hands. Silas led her to the bottom of the platform. The crowd fell silent. Thousands of eyes focused on her. Sarah could almost feel their thoughts. Wolfless. Defective. Worthless. Let them think it. She was not here for them. Damon's voice rolled across the clearing. "State your name and your crime." Sarah lifted her chin. "My name is Sarah Ashwood. I'm accused of harboring a child claimed by Madame Voss." "And your plea?" "Guilty." The word rang clearly through the silence. "I took Lily because she was starving and terrified. I would make the same choice again." Whispers rippled across the crowd. Damon's expression did not change, but Sarah caught a brief flicker in those golden eyes. "You understand the law. An unclaimed Omega belongs to whoever legally holds the contract. You interfered with recognized ownership." Sarah's fear transformed into anger. "I understand that your law values property more than people." Gasps exploded through the crowd. Speaking to the Alpha King without absolute deference could itself bring punishment. Sarah no longer cared. "I understand that a 5-year-old child can be sold into slavery, while hundreds of wolves know about it and choose to do nothing." Silence fell. "If that is what you call justice, then I want no part of it." Damon descended from the platform. Slowly. Controlled. He stopped directly in front of Sarah. She could feel warmth radiating from his body. His scent surrounded her. Pine, storm, and something unmistakably alpha. "You speak very boldly for someone facing death." he said quietly. Sarah held his gaze. I'm already dead. His eyes narrowed. I've been dead since my pack threw me away for being wolfless. The only thing left to decide is whether I die as a coward or as someone who stood for something. Damon studied her. You're wolfless? Yes. Then why did you believe you could win a moon trial? These trials are decided through strength. You have none. Sarah did not look away. I didn't come here to win. For the first time, Damon seemed genuinely curious. I came here to buy Lily time, Sarah continued. Territorial law protects the child, while my trial is unresolved. By now, Mrs. Chen should have taken her across the border to the sanctuary, where Madame Voss cannot reach her. Understanding appeared in Damon's face. So you see, Alpha King, I already got what I came for. For the first time, surprise broke through the king's control. Then another emotion followed. Respect, perhaps. Clever, he murmured. His mouth tightened. Stupid, but clever. Then Damon turned toward the gathering. The traditional moon trial requires the accused to offer their throat in absolute submission. If I judge them worthy of mercy, they live. He let the alternative remain unspoken. Sarah's hands trembled. She forced them still. I understand. Damon looked at her. Then kneel. Sarah lowered herself onto her knees. The Alpha King moved around her slowly, like a predator examining something he had not yet decided whether to destroy. No one in the crowd made a sound. Sarah could hear her own heartbeat. She could feel the weight of the blood moon against her skin. Then Damon stopped. Offer your throat. Sarah knew this was the moment. She tilted her head back. Her throat lay exposed. For a wolf, there was no more complete gesture of surrender. Sarah sensed Damon behind her. His breath touched her skin. Any final words? He asked. Sarah swallowed. One question. Ask it. Was she worth it? Damon went still. Sarah's voice remained steady. The child you'll save by killing me. Was she worth the price? His hand settled against her shoulder. Sarah felt claws extend. Not a full shift. Just enough to tear through flesh. Enough to kill. Her name is Lily, Sarah continued. She likes strawberries. She likes stories about brave knights. She's afraid of the dark, even though she pretends she isn't. Sarah's eyes burned. She deserves a life. That's why I'm here. The claws touched her throat. Sarah closed her eyes. She waited for death. It did not come. Instead, heat erupted through her body, blazing, overwhelming. Something struck the junction between her neck and shoulder, Damon's teeth. Sarah screamed as pain exploded through every nerve in her body. But it was not a killing bite. It was a claiming mark. Chaos erupted around them. Wolves shouted. Some roared in outrage. Others cried out in disbelief. Sarah could barely hear any of it. Her world had narrowed to the impossible fire spreading from Damon's bite through her blood, as though the mark were burning itself directly into her soul. When Damon finally released her, Sarah sagged forward. His hand caught her before she struck the ground. What? She gasped. What did you do? Damon pulled her upright with effortless strength, one arm supporting her. His eyes blazed molten gold. His wolf was right beneath the surface. Then the Alpha King faced the stunned crowd. I claim her. His voice carried absolute authority through the clearing. Sarah Ashwood is under my protection. Sarah stared at him. Damon continued. She bears my mark. Anyone who harms her will answer to me. Mate. The meaning of what had happened crashed into her, impossible and incomprehensible. I don't understand, Sarah whispered. Damon looked down at her. For one fleeting moment, something painfully vulnerable appeared beneath the king's power. Neither do I. His voice dropped so only she could hear. But my wolf knows what it wants. Sarah's vision blurred. And it wants you. The world disappeared into darkness. Chapter 3. The Claiming. Sarah woke surrounded by silk sheets and the scent of cedar. For several confused seconds, she believed she was dreaming. The mattress beneath her was impossibly soft, nothing like the thin bed in her apartment above the butcher shop. Golden morning light filtered through gauzy curtains, then the mark on her neck pulsed. Heat spread across her skin. The memories returned all at once. The blood moon, the trial, Damon, the bite. Sarah jerked upright and pressed a hand against the side of her neck. Her fingertips found raised skin. A claiming mark. A mate mark. Fresh and still, filled with enough supernatural energy to make her dizzy. This can't be real. The door opened. A woman entered carrying a silver tray. She was elegant, with dark hair arranged in a precise bun and clothing that looked expensive enough to feed half the outskirts. Sarah recognized her rank immediately. An Omega. But this Omega carried herself with the confidence of someone who had never been treated as disposable. "You're awake," the woman said. Her tone was controlled and neutral. "My name is Eleanor. I'm the king's head attendant. I've brought breakfast." Sarah looked at the tray. Fresh fruit, warm bread, honey, jasmine tea. More food than Sarah normally ate in several days. "Where am I?" "The Northern Palace, the king's private wing." Eleanor placed the tray beside the bed. "You were unconscious for 18 hours. The claiming mark took longer than expected to settle." 18 hours? Panic surged through Sarah. "Lily, the little girl, is she safe?" Eleanor's expression softened. "Yes, the king sent enforcers to guarantee her passage to the sanctuary. She is there with Mrs. Chen. They're protected, and both have been given food and everything they need." Sarah almost stopped breathing. Eleanor continued. "The king also paid Madame Voss for Lily's contract." Sarah stared at her. "The child is legally free." Relief hit so hard it hurt. Tears burned behind Sarah's eyes. She refused to let them fall. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Thank the king." Eleanor moved toward the wardrobe. "You need to dress. His Majesty expects you in his study within the hour." Sarah shook her head. "I don't understand any of this." Her voice cracked. "Why did he mark me? I'm Wolfless. I'm nobody. Alphas don't claim Omegas like me." Eleanor stopped. For several seconds she remained facing the wardrobe. Then she spoke carefully. "The king does not explain his decisions to servants." Sarah looked down. "But I'll tell you one thing." Eleanor turned. "In 300 years of Blackwood rule, no Alpha King has ever claimed a mate during a moon trial." Sarah's heart pounded. What happened last night broke centuries of tradition. Then why? "That," Eleanor interrupted gently, "is something only the king can explain." An hour later, Sarah stood outside Damon's study. She wore an emerald green dress that probably cost more than she had earned in years. It was simple by palace standards but perfectly tailored. Sarah felt like an imposter wearing someone else's life. She lifted her hand to knock. The door opened before her knuckles touched it. Damon stood on the other side. Sarah's breath caught. During the trial, moonlight and power had made him look almost inhuman. In the warm afternoon light, he looked closer to ordinary. Almost. He had traded ceremonial clothing for simple black garments. His dark hair was slightly disordered, as if he had repeatedly dragged his fingers through it. But the eyes were unchanged. Amber gold. Intense. Far too observant. "Come in." Sarah entered. The study surprised her. Books and maps covered the walls. A fire burned in a stone hearth. The room looked warm and genuinely used. It did not feel like the private chamber of an untouchable king. It felt like somewhere a person might hide from the rest of the world. "Sit." Damon indicated a leather chair near the fire. Sarah sat with her back straight and her hands folded together. Her mark throbbed in response to Damon's nearness. He remained standing. The silence stretched. Finally, Damon spoke. "You're angry." "Confused," Sarah corrected. She looked directly at him. "You were supposed to kill me." His expression remained guarded. That's what the moon trial was for. That's what everyone expected. Instead, you marked me as your mate, and I don't know why. Neither do I. Sarah blinked. Of all the answers she expected, honesty was not one of them. Damon turned toward the fire. I've presided over 12 moon trials. His profile was sharply outlined by the flames. They always ended the same way, mercy or death, depending on what the accused had done. It's a ritual, predictable, controlled. A humorless laugh escaped him. Safe. Sarah waited. But then you knelt. His jaw tightened. You exposed your throat. You talked about that child as though her life mattered more than your own. He looked back at Sarah, and my wolf lost control. Her heartbeat accelerated. Your wolf? The animal inside every shifter, the part of ourselves we spend our lives learning to manage. Something raw entered Damon's expression. My wolf wanted you. He paused. No, it needed you. Sarah said nothing. The instinct was so strong I couldn't think. I could barely breathe. I knew only one thing. If I killed you, I would be destroying something precious. His eyes held hers. Something mine. Sarah's voice came out barely above a whisper. But I'm wolfless. She looked away. I'm broken. You're not broken. The force behind his words made her look up again. Damon seemed almost angry. You were the bravest person in that clearing. Sarah stared. Do you understand what you did? You knowingly walked into death for a child who wasn't yours. You challenged me, your alpha king, in front of thousands of wolves. His voice softened. You didn't beg, you didn't cry, you didn't run. Damon stepped closer. You offered your own life as though it were a reasonable price for one little girl's freedom. Sarah swallowed. She deserved better than Madame Voss. Exactly. Damon crossed the remaining distance. Then, to Sarah's shock, the Alpha King lowered himself onto one knee before her chair. Sarah forgot how to breathe. Damon brought himself level with her. Most people would have agreed with you and still done nothing. His gaze never left hers. You acted. He slowly lifted one hand. Sarah could have pulled away. She did not. Damon touched the mark on her neck. Heat bloomed beneath his fingertips. Sarah gasped. You're not broken, Sarah Ashwood. You're extraordinary. The words struck somewhere deep inside her. My wolf recognized that before I did. His fingers remained against the mark. I marked you because, in that moment, my wolf claimed you as its mate. Damon hesitated. And I couldn't deny it. Another pause. I didn't want to. Sarah stared at the most powerful man in the Northern Territories, kneeling before her. Then Damon said something she never expected. But a claiming mark does not give me ownership of you. Sarah went still. If you truly want to leave, if being tied to me is unbearable, I will find a way to break the bond. His expression tightened with pain. I will not keep you here as a prisoner. Sarah struggled to process the words. For 7 years, everyone with power had made decisions for her. Her father had decided she was worthless. The Pax had decided she belonged outside society. The law had decided Lily could become property. Now Alpha King Damon Blackwood, a man powerful enough to command entire territories, was offering Sarah a choice. What happens if the bond is broken? Pain flickered across his face. It would hurt both of us. How much? Excruciatingly. A wolf bond isn't designed to be severed. He did not soften the truth. But I would survive. Damon continued. And you would be free to live however you wanted. Sarah remembered Lily. And Lily? Protected regardless of what you choose. Damon's voice became firm. I gave you my word. I keep my promises. Sarah's thoughts spun. One part of her wanted to run. Return to the outskirts. Return to a painful life she at least understood. But another part, one she barely recognized, whispered something else. Stay. Find out what this could become. Sarah finally spoke. I don't love you. The corner of Damon's mouth lifted slightly. I don't love you either. Sarah almost laughed in disbelief. Not yet, he added. The hint of humor disappeared. But my wolf chose you for some reason. Maybe we can try to understand why. How? No pressure, no expectations, just time. Time for what? To know each other. To learn whether this bond is more than an animal instinct. Damon stood and held out his hand. I'm Damon, by the way. Sarah looked up. Not your majesty, not Alpha King. His hand remained extended. Just Damon. Sarah stared at it. Here was the choice. She could refuse. She could walk away. Or she could step into something completely unknown. Slowly, Sarah placed her hand in his. Damon's fingers closed warmly around hers. I'm Sarah, he smiled. Just Sarah. Just Sarah, Damon repeated. This time his smile was real. I think that's exactly who you're supposed to be. The following 3 days passed in a blur of unfamiliar luxury and even more unfamiliar kindness. Damon did not expect Sarah to share his bedroom. He gave her a private suite instead, more luxurious than anything she had ever imagined. Eleanor visited regularly and made certain she had whatever she required. Each evening, Damon asked Sarah to dine with him, and they talked. Not as king and Omega, as two people attempting to understand each other. Sarah learned that Damon had become Alpha King at 19 after his father was killed in a rogue attack. For 15 years, he had built alliances and strengthened the territorial system. He loved books. He hated ceremonies. And sometimes the responsibilities of ruling thousands of wolves felt crushing. Damon learned that before Sarah's exile, she had been studying healing. He learned that she still missed her mother despite everything. He learned about the nightmares Sarah had carried since the night everyone watched her fail to shift. During dinner on the 3rd night, Damon asked, Do you resent them? Sarah knew immediately who he meant. Your family, he clarified. Sarah thought carefully. I did. She stared into her glass. For years I was so angry that I could barely think about anything else. Damon listened silently. But anger is exhausting. Sarah exhaled. Eventually, I stopped carrying it. They made their choice. Damon watched her. And I made mine. To survive? To live, Sarah corrected. There's a difference. Something changed in Damon's expression. Respect. Perhaps something deeper. On the 4th morning, Sarah woke to shouting in the corridor. She quickly pulled on a robe and opened her door. Servants rushed past her with pale faces. The palace was in chaos. Eleanor appeared. For the first time since Sarah had met her, the head attendant looked shaken. What's happening? Sarah asked. The council. Eleanor stopped to catch her breath. They've called an emergency meeting. Sarah's stomach tightened. They are demanding that the king annul the mate bond. Ice spread through Sarah. Why? Eleanor's face turned grim. Because you're wolfless. Sarah went still. They're calling the bond an abomination. They say an Alpha King cannot take a defective Omega as his queen. Defective. The word struck with the same force it had 7 years earlier. Abomination. Defective. Worthless. All the words Sarah thought she had learned to survive were now being aimed at the one person who had chosen her. Where is Damon? The throne room. Eleanor reached toward her. Sarah, you cannot simply... Sarah was already running. Chapter 4. The Council's Judgment. The throne room was built to make people feel small. Its ceiling rose high above Sarah, supported by enormous marble pillars carved with wolves in the middle of a hunt. Stained glass windows displayed Blackwood history, wars, coronations, victories, all rendered in brilliant jewel-colored light. At the far end of the hall, elevated on a black stone dais, stood the ancient throne, wood and iron, forged in an age when magic still moved openly through the world. Around it stood 12 alphas, the council. 12 of the most powerful wolves Sarah had ever encountered. Their combined dominance pressed against her body like invisible weight. Her knees threatened to bend. Sarah kept walking. Every person in the throne room turned toward her. Servants stood against the walls. Guards remained rigid at their posts. Daemon sat on his throne, his expression cold. Sarah, the warning in his voice was unmistakable. You shouldn't be here. I know. She stopped below the dais. But you're discussing me. Sarah lifted her face toward him. I deserve to hear it. A silver-haired counselor stepped forward. His blue eyes were cold, his face hard and weathered. The Omega speaks without permission. Sarah looked at him. She has not been invited to address this council. The Omega has a name. The words came out before Sarah could stop them. The counselor's face darkened. And if you're discussing me, I will speak whether you've given permission or not. A shocked silence swept through the room. You dare. Enough, Counselor Thane. Daemon's voice cracked through the room like a whip. Thane went rigid. Daemon looked at Sarah. She stays. Then he turned back to the council. Continue your argument, she will hear it. Thane's jaw tightened, but he bowed his head. Very well. His voice became measured again. As I was saying, the council finds His Majesty's claiming of this Omega both dangerous and unlawful. The mate bond must be dissolved immediately. Daemon leaned back. On what legal grounds? Another counselor stepped forward. A woman with sharp features and calculating eyes. On the obvious grounds that she is wolfless. Daemon's gaze hardened. Our law requires a queen to come from strong blood and possess sound character. It also requires her to be capable of shifting, the woman insisted. The queen must be capable of producing strong heirs for the Blackwood line. She looked directly at Sarah. This Omega can do neither. The law does not explicitly require shifting ability, Daemon replied. Because no one imagined it needed to be written. Thane slammed his fist down. No Alpha King in history has ever been foolish enough to claim a defective mate. Defective. Sarah's fingers curled into fists. Watch your tongue, counselor. Daemon's voice became dangerously soft. The room seemed colder. You're referring to my mate. We are referring to a mistake. A younger counselor with auburn hair stepped forward. His smile was polished and political. Your Majesty, we understand why she caught your attention. The Omega is attractive enough, and what happened at the moon trial was certainly dramatic. Sarah's jaw tightened. But sentiment cannot rule a kingdom. The counselor continued. You need a strong queen, someone who can stand beside you as an equal, not someone who becomes a weakness you must constantly defend. Sarah is stronger than any of you understand. Thane laughed without humor. Strength is not measured through pretty speeches and reckless sacrifice. His eyes moved toward Sarah. Strength is power, the ability to shift, to fight, to defend the pack. Thane looked back at Daemon. What happens when rogues breach the palace? What happens when an enemy attacks your queen while you are elsewhere? She cannot even access a wolf. She would be dead within minutes. Then I'll protect her. You cannot protect her every moment of every day. The female counselor stepped closer. Your Majesty, we aren't demanding her death. Her voice softened as though she were proposing something reasonable. Dissolve the bond. Give the girl a comfortable home somewhere in the territories. Give her resources. Then choose a proper mate worthy of the Blackwood throne. Sarah had heard enough. May I speak? The council turned toward her. Thane sneered. The Omega wishes to humiliate herself further. He gestured. Please, continue. Sarah ignored him. She looked at Daemon instead. His eyes were unreadable, but tension filled his shoulders, and his hands gripped the arms of his throne. I agree with the council. The throne room erupted. Daemon's expression broke. For a moment, Sarah saw shock, then pain. Sarah, let me finish. She turned toward the council. You're right about certain things. The room quieted. I am Wolfless. Sarah raised her chin. I cannot shift. I cannot fight the way you fight. I cannot provide the kind of strength you consider important. Thane's mouth curved into a victorious smile. Finally, the Omega understands reason. Sarah looked directly at him. But your definition of strength is broken. His smile vanished. You worship one kind of power, Sarah continued. The ability to shift, to dominate, to force obedience through physical strength. She looked across all 12 counselors. You built an entire society around that definition. Sarah took a step forward. And everyone who does not fit it gets discarded. Several counselors instinctively stepped back. I lived in the outskirts for 7 years. Her voice became stronger. I have watched children starve because no pack would accept a wolfless Omega. She thought of Lily. I've watched elderly wolves die alone because injury or age took away their ability to shift. Her hands trembled with anger. I've held the hands of people who spent their entire lives being told they were worthless because their bodies couldn't do what yours could. The female counselor started to interrupt. Sarah did not let her. And do you know what 7 years among those people taught me? Silence. Your definition of strength is a lie. The counselor's face twisted. How dare you? Sarah gave a bitter laugh. How dare I? She looked around at the marble and stained glass. How dare you? Her voice rang through the throne room. You sit inside this palace and write laws that condemn thousands of people to suffering, and then you call it justice. No one answered. You discard people like broken tools and call that strength. Sarah's voice softened, but the room somehow grew quieter. Real strength isn't claws. It isn't fangs. It's waking up every morning when you have nothing and deciding to keep living. She looked at Thane. It's protecting someone weaker than yourself when no one has ever protected you. Then she looked toward Damon. It's choosing kindness in a world that rewards cruelty. Sarah drew a breath. 3 days ago, Damon asked whether I still hated my family for casting me out. The king watched her. I told him I had let go of that anger. Sarah paused. But that wasn't the whole truth. Her gaze moved back to the council. Being exiled taught me something none of you seem to understand. Sarah straightened. Your worth is not something another person gets to grant you, and it isn't something another person gets to take away. Damon stared at her. You claim it for yourself. Sarah turned fully toward the council. So yes, I am wolfless. I'm an Omega. I'm everything your system says I shouldn't be. Her voice rose. But I survived 7 years of hell without surrendering my dignity. I risked my life for a child I barely knew. And right now, I'm standing in front of the most powerful alphas in the realm, telling all of you that the system you built is wrong. Sarah smiled. Fierce. Proud. If that isn't strength, counselors, I don't know what is. No one spoke. Then Damon stood. He came down from the throne in 3 long strides. He stopped in front of Sarah and lifted one hand to her face. His thumb moved gently across her cheek. You're magnificent, he said. Then Damon turned toward the council. The tenderness vanished from his expression. What replaced it was the Alpha King. Absolute. Terrifying. The mate bond stands. His command thundered through the hall. Sarah Ashwood remains my chosen queen. Any counselor unable to accept that decision may resign immediately. Thane's face reddened. Your Majesty, you're making a catastrophic mistake. No. Damon's wolf flashed through his eyes, turning them molten gold. The catastrophic mistake was building a civilization that measures a person's worth by whether they can shift. He looked across the council. Sarah is right. Our system is broken. Damon's voice deepened. It has been broken for generations. We have discarded people who could have strengthened our packs simply because they did not match one narrow definition of power. Damon moved beside Sarah. His hand found hers. Their fingers intertwined. That changes now. The council stared. We begin with the laws governing wolfless omegas. Damon's gaze swept the room. They will no longer be considered property. A murmur began. They will no longer be treated as second-class citizens. The murmuring grew louder. They will receive the same protections and rights as every other member of this realm. You cannot rewrite centuries of law because of one omega, the female counselor protested. Damon looked at her. I'm not acting because of impulse. His hand tightened around Sarah's. I'm acting on principle. He faced the entire council. My mate forced me to see what I was too blind to recognize. Damon's voice carried through the hall. We've been measuring the wrong things. Intelligence matters. Courage matters. Compassion matters. Resilience matters. His eyes flashed. Those qualities matter far more than the ability to grow claws. Thane stepped forward. You would dismantle this council for a wolfless omega. Damon did not move. I would rebuild this entire realm if necessary. His voice dropped. The bond stands. Sarah will be queen. The law will change. Damon's dominance filled the room. Those are not requests. His eyes burned gold. They are commands from your Alpha King. The tension became suffocating. Sarah saw the counselors calculating. Could they challenge Damon? Did they have enough influence? Enough wolves? Enough strength? Finally, Thane lowered his head. As you command, Your Majesty. One by one, the others followed. Some looked furious. Others resigned. Damon nodded once. Good. Then his voice hardened. This meeting is over. Get out. The counselors filed from the room. Several cast dark looks toward Sarah. When only guards remained at a respectful distance, Damon turned toward her. You shouldn't have agreed with them. His voice was quiet now, not angry. For a moment, I thought you wanted me to break the bond. Sarah shook her head. I needed them to listen. Damon waited. If I had defended myself immediately, they would have dismissed everything as a desperate omega, trying to hold on to her position, Sarah explained. But when I agreed with their concerns first, they had to listen to what came afterward. Damon stared. Then he laughed. Not the controlled sound of a king. A real laugh. It changed his entire face. My wolf chose even better than I realized. Sarah felt warmth touch her cheeks. You're not merely brave, Sarah. Damon moved toward her. You're brilliant. I only said what needed to be said. No. He stopped close enough that the mark on her neck warmed. You challenged centuries of prejudice in front of 12 of the most powerful wolves alive. His smile returned. And you won. Sarah looked toward the doors through which the council had disappeared. They're going to hate me. They'll survive. They'll never accept me. Then they'll have to learn how to live with disappointment. Damon reached behind her neck. His thumb brushed across the mate mark. I meant what I said. I'll rebuild this realm if I have to. Sarah looked into his eyes. Starting with protecting me? Starting with protecting you. I don't want protection. Damon went still. Sarah's voice lowered. I want a partner. Something dark and intense moved through his expression. Then a partner is what you'll have. He leaned closer. Equal in everything. Damon gave her every opportunity to step away. Sarah remained where she was. His mouth touched hers. Soft. Questioning. The kiss was nothing like Sarah expected from an Alpha King. There was no demand in it. No aggression. It was almost reverent. As though Damon feared one wrong movement might break something between them. When they separated, both were breathing harder. Damon rested his forehead against hers. Thank you. Sarah blinked. For what? For being exactly who you are. His fingers moved through her hair. For refusing to break. He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. For teaching me what strength actually looks like. Then Damon gave a faint smile. I don't deserve you, Sarah Ashwood. Sarah raised an eyebrow. But I'm selfish enough to keep you anyway. A genuine smile spread across Sarah's face. She had almost forgotten what that felt like. Good. She touched his hand. Because I'm not going anywhere. Chapter 5. Shadows in the Palace. 3 days later, someone tried to poison Sarah. She woke in the middle of the night with agony twisting through her stomach. Sarah barely reached the bathroom before her body convulsed. She fell to her knees and vomited violently. Something inside her recognized poison and was desperately trying to expel it. Sarah collapsed against the cold floor. Sweat covered her skin. Her entire body shook. She tried to call for help, but her throat tightened until she could barely breathe. Then she felt the mate bond ignite. A sudden flare of awareness. Damon. Less than a minute later, Sarah's bedroom door crashed open. Damon rushed inside. His eyes were wild. He found Sarah on the bathroom floor and dropped beside her. Sarah. His hands hovered helplessly. God, Sarah, what happened? Tea, she managed. Damon leaned closer. Before bed, Sarah struggled to breathe. Eleanor brought. Another wave of sickness struck. Damon caught her hair in one hand while rubbing circles across her back with the other. When the worst passed, he lifted Sarah effortlessly and carried her into bed. Guards. His voice shook the room. Get the healer. Now. Within minutes, people filled Sarah's chambers. The palace healer, Margot, examined her rapidly. She was a stern-faced woman whose calm efficiency contrasted sharply with Damon pacing nearby like a trapped predator. His wolf was so close to the surface that his eyes repeatedly flashed gold. Finally, Margot lifted a small vial. Nightshade. Damon stopped moving. Margot's expression was grim. Something was added to hide the flavor. She's fortunate her body rejected it before enough entered her bloodstream. She did not finish the alternative. Damon's hands trembled. Sarah had never seen him like this. The controlled king was gone. Who? His voice was almost too quiet. Who brought the tea? A guard stepped forward. Eleanor, Your Majesty. She personally delivered the evening tray at 9, as usual. Bring her here. The guard went pale. Your Majesty, she's gone. Damon slowly turned. What? Her rooms are empty. We believe she fled after delivering the tray. Sarah felt Damon's rage through the mate bond. It was dark. Immense. Almost consuming. Find her. His wolf roughened the words. Search this palace. Search every building in the territory. Damon's eyes became pure gold. I want her alive. She does not get the mercy of a quick death. The guards scattered. Margot finished administering an antidote and left instructions for Sarah's recovery. When the room finally emptied, Damon returned to the bedside. He took Sarah's hand. His touch was gentle despite the violence still burning inside him. I'm sorry. His voice was rough. This is my fault. Sarah frowned weakly. You didn't poison me. I should have known. I should have protected you better. You couldn't have known Eleanor would. Sarah stopped. A thought struck her. Why would she do this? Damon's jaw tightened. She seemed kind, Sarah continued, almost maternal. Someone bought her loyalty. Sarah stared. Eleanor has worked for this family for 15 years. She was trusted, respected, and well paid. Damon looked toward the door. The only reason she would risk everything is if someone offered her something she valued more than her position. The council. Most likely. Damon raised Sarah's hand and kissed her knuckles. But we'll know soon. His expression hardened. And when we do, there will be consequences. Eleanor was captured 3 hours later, while attempting to cross the southern border. Damon ordered her brought to the throne room in chains. Sarah insisted on attending despite Margot's objections. She was weak. Her hands still shook. But she needed to understand why someone she had begun trusting had tried to murder her. Eleanor knelt on the marble floor. Her elegant composure had vanished. Dark hair hung loose around her tear-streaked face. Her bound hands trembled behind her. Damon did not sit on the throne. He stood in front of it, radiating barely controlled fury. Explain. Eleanor looked up. And choose your words very carefully. Damon's voice turned cold. They are the only thing separating you from an extremely painful death. Eleanor swallowed. They told me she was dangerous. Who? They said she would destroy everything you've built, that a wolfless queen would bring chaos to the realm. Damon stepped forward. Who told you? I can't. Eleanor began crying. They'll kill my family, my daughter, my granddaughter. Damon's expression did not change. I'll kill your family if you refuse to speak. Sarah flinched. And I'll make you watch. Damon's voice was ice. Talk. The cruelty shocked Sarah, but she also understood what she was witnessing. This was not simply Damon. This was the Alpha King who had survived 15 years of rule. A man capable of using fear when necessary. A man Sarah had largely been protected from seeing. Eleanor broke. Counselor Thane, she sobbed. He approached me 2 weeks ago, before the moon trial. Damon's face hardened. He said changes were coming, dangerous changes. Eleanor's words tumbled out. He said that if I truly cared about the realm, I had to help stop a disaster. By murdering an innocent woman? By removing a threat? Eleanor lifted her head. Something like conviction still lived behind her tears. Your Majesty, please. I've served this family my entire adult life. She looked at Damon. I watched you grow from a boy into a king. Her voice broke. Everything I did was meant to protect you, to protect the realm from what? Damon's tone could have cut steel. From a woman who showed courage? He gestured toward Sarah. From someone who nearly died to rescue a child. Damon moved closer. What precisely makes her dangerous? Eleanor's answer burst out. She's changing you. Silence. Before her, you were focused, untouchable. Eleanor's desperation increased. You made decisions based on logic and strength. She pointed toward Sarah. Now you're talking about rewriting laws, challenging the council, destroying centuries of tradition. Eleanor looked at Damon. All because of an Omega who cannot even shift. Her voice became almost pleading. Don't you understand? She's making you soft. A pause. Weak. Sarah felt something cold settle inside her. That was the real divide. Eleanor believed every word. So did people like Thane. Compassion was weakness. Mercy was weakness. Anyone threatening their hierarchy was dangerous enough to destroy. Damon descended the dais. When he spoke, his voice became conversational, almost friendly. It was more frightening than his anger. You're right about one thing. Eleanor stared at him. Sarah changed me. Damon stopped in front of her. She forced me to question systems I had accepted without thinking. She showed me forms of strength I never bothered to recognize. Eleanor seemed hopeful. Then Damon continued. But you're wrong about the most important thing. His eyes turned gold. She didn't make me weak. She made me dangerous. Damon turned. Guards. Several stepped forward. Take Eleanor to the cells. She will stand trial for attempted murder and conspiracy. His gaze returned to her. If Thane is involved, we will prove it. The guards dragged Eleanor away. She sobbed as she disappeared through the doors. Damon returned to Sarah. When he took her hand, Sarah felt him trembling. Rage, adrenaline, fear, all tangled together. We need to leave the palace. Sarah looked at him. Where would we go? The northern estate. Remote, defensible. The staff there are people I trust personally. Damon searched her face. I will not let them hurt you again. His voice lowered. Whatever it takes. They left before sunrise. Damon kept the departure secret and brought only a small number of guards he trusted completely. Sarah watched the palace disappear behind their carriage. Yet she could not shake the feeling that they were not leaving danger, only moving toward another version of it. The northern estate stood near the edge of Blackwood territory in a valley surrounded by ancient pine forest. It was smaller than the royal palace but no less beautiful. Stone and heavy timber, built for severe winters and violent times. A reduced staff waited for them. Damon had sent instructions ahead, and rooms had been prepared. For the first few days, Sarah tried to settle into their temporary refuge. Then she noticed something. The servants were afraid of her. They avoided looking directly into her eyes. Every task was completed efficiently, but no one remained near Sarah longer than necessary. Even the guards seemed uneasy. On the third day, Sarah confronted Iris, a young maid helping fasten her dress. "Why is everyone afraid of me?" Iris froze. "My lady, I don't. Please." Sarah looked at her through the mirror. "Just tell me the truth." Iris's shoulders dropped. "People are saying things." "What things?" "That you're cursed." Sarah stared. Iris continued quietly. "They say you're the reason the king is fighting with the council, that you're bringing darkness into the realm. Because I'm wolfless? Because you're different." Iris lowered her voice. "And because bad things happen to people around you." Sarah felt cold. "What does that mean?" "The healer who treated you after the poisoning. Her daughter became ill 2 days later." Iris swallowed. "One of the guards who escorted you here lost his horse. It suddenly went lame and had to be killed. Those are coincidences." "Maybe." Iris did not sound convinced. "But people are frightened." She looked down, and frightened people believe what they already want to believe. After Iris left, Sarah stood alone at the window. Cursed. They believed she carried a curse. It was almost absurd. She had survived 7 years as the monster in her own family's story. Now she had become one for an entire territory. The door opened. Sarah sensed Damon before he spoke. "You heard the rumors." It was not a question. "How long have you known?" "Since yesterday." Damon came behind her. "I wanted to deal with it before you heard." He wrapped his arms around Sarah and rested his chin against the top of her head. "They're wrong." Sarah stared into the forest. "You're not cursed." "But they believe I am." Damon's hold tightened. "Belief can change." "Can it?" "We'll change it." His voice was certain. "I won't let them make you into a villain." Sarah leaned back against him. She wanted to borrow his certainty, yet somewhere beneath it, a darker fear remained. Perhaps Eleanor had been right about one thing. Maybe Sarah really was dangerous. The attack came on the 7th night. Sarah woke to smoke, then screaming. She stumbled from bed and opened the door. Thick gray smoke filled the corridor. It burned her eyes and lungs. Damon. His door flew open 3 rooms away. He emerged only partially dressed. His wolf burned gold in his eyes. "Get out!" He reached Sarah. "The house is burning." They ran through the corridor. Damon held her wrist tightly. Fire climbed the walls at impossible speed. Sarah understood immediately. This isn't an accident. No. Someone had deliberately set the estate on fire, and they had used something to accelerate the flames. They burst through the entrance. Outside was worse. The entire estate had been attacked. At least 24 rogues swarmed across the grounds. Damon's guards fought them desperately. Bodies already covered the grass. Human and wolf. Blood appeared black beneath the moonlight. "Stay behind me," Damon ordered. His voice was already rough with the emerging wolf. 3 rogues saw them. All 3 turned toward Sarah. They knew their target. Damon shifted. Bones broke and reformed in a violent explosion of power. Seconds later, a massive midnight black wolf stood where the king had been. He was nearly twice the size of an ordinary wolf. The first rogue reached them. Damon caught its throat between his jaws. One brutal shake. The rogue was dead before its body hit the ground. The other 2 split. One attacked Damon. The second came directly for Sarah. She ran. Sarah hated herself for running. But what else could a wolfless Omega do against a creature made to kill? She sprinted toward the trees. Branches struck her face. Roots caught at her feet. Behind her came snarls and the sickening sounds of wolves tearing into each other. Then Sarah heard another set of paws. Closer. Gaining. Her foot caught a root. She fell hard. Pain exploded through her palms. Sarah rolled onto her back. The rogue was already in the air. Its jaws opened toward her throat. A gray wolf crashed into it from the side. The two animals struck the forest floor in a violent tangle of claws and teeth. Sarah scrambled backward. The gray wolf pinned the rogue. Then it killed it. Blood coated its muzzle as it turned toward Sarah. Intelligence filled its eyes. Recognition. The wolf shifted back into human form. Sarah stared. Silas, the enforcer who had arrested her before the moon trial. He was covered in blood, but his expression was focused. My lady. Silas breathed hard. We need to get you somewhere secure. What about Damon? The king can defend himself. Silas looked toward the fighting. You're the target. His eyes returned to Sarah. They came to kill you. Before Sarah could answer, something huge burst through the trees. A black wolf, Damon. His fur was coated in blood that did not belong to him. He shifted instantly. His eyes searched wildly until he found Sarah. Are you hurt? No. She glanced at Silas. Silas saved me. Damon looked at the enforcer. For one quiet moment, understanding passed between them. Thank you. Silas nodded. My duty, Your Majesty. Then he pointed toward the estate. The rogues are retreating. 8 dead, 2 captured. Silas's face turned grim. But the house is lost. They looked back. Flames engulfed the northern estate. Orange fire climbed into the night. Sarah watched centuries of history disappear. Servants stood crying with whatever belongings they had managed to rescue. Guilt pressed down on Sarah until she could barely breathe. All of this was because of her. Damon found her hand. This isn't your fault. Sarah looked at him. How can you say that? Her voice broke. They're targeting me. Eleanor tried to poison me. Someone spread rumors to isolate me. And now rogues attacked this place specifically because I'm here. Sarah pulled her hand away. Everyone near me gets hurt. Damon's expression changed. Then we stop running. Sarah stared. We stop waiting for another attack. His voice became iron. We stop reacting. Damon looked toward the burning estate. We hunt whoever is responsible. He faced her again. Someone is coordinating this. Someone with money, access, and knowledge. Sarah's pulse quickened. And tomorrow, we're going to find out who. Damon pulled her against him. Sarah buried her face against his chest. He smelled of smoke and blood, and the wild scent that was only Damon. Something deep in her wolfless heart ached. I won't let them win, he whispered into her hair. His arms tightened. I won't let them take you away from me. But as Sarah stood in the ruins of their sanctuary, watching fire devour everything around them, one terrible thought refused to leave. Some battles demanded prices no one could afford. Chapter 6. The Interrogation. The 2 captured rogues were chained with silver beneath the old guard barracks. The stone cellar was one of the only structures untouched by the fire. Damon did not want Sarah present for the interrogation. Sarah refused to stay away. She needed to know who wanted her dead badly enough to burn an entire estate. The cellar was damp and cold. Torches flickered along rough stone walls. 2 men hung from chains attached to the ceiling. Silver burned into their wrists, leaving the flesh raw. One rogue was older, his graying hair and scars revealing a hard life. The second looked barely older than a boy. Damon stood before them. Silas waited on one side. Another trusted guard named Kira stood on the other. Sarah remained near the entrance. Names, Damon commanded. The older rogue spat at his feet. Go to hell, King. Damon moved faster than Sarah could follow. His hand closed around the rogue's throat. He slammed the man into the wall. Chains rattled violently. "I will ask one more time." Damon's eyes flashed. "Names." "Garrett," the man choked out. Damon released him. "Just Garrett." Then Damon turned toward the younger prisoner. "And you?" The young man trembled. "T. Thomas, Your Majesty." Damon's voice became deceptively calm. "Thomas appears to understand manners." He stepped closer. "Now tell me who hired you to attack my estate." Garrett coughed. "We don't know." Damon looked at him. "We were contacted through an intermediary. Never saw the client's face. Never heard a real name." Garrett gave a bitter smile. "That's how jobs like this work." "But you knew your target." Garrett looked toward Sarah. Hatred filled his expression. "The Wolfless Omega." Damon's jaw tightened. "Yeah, we knew." Garrett sneered. "Everyone knows about the king's abomination of a mate." Damon's fist struck his jaw. The crack echoed through the cellar. Blood sprayed onto the floor. "Careful." Damon's voice was soft. "That's my queen you're insulting." "She's no queen." Garrett spat blood. "She's a curse. A disease. This realm would be better if—" Damon hit him again. Harder. Garrett's head snapped sideways. He sagged in his chains. Damon turned toward Thomas. The younger rogue shook so badly the silver chains trembled. "You seem more intelligent than your companion." Damon stepped closer. "Tell me what I need to know, and your death will be quick." Thomas went pale. "Lie to me." Damon's voice dropped. "And I'll make it last for days." "I don't know much." Thomas stammered. "We were told to kill the Omega, no matter what it cost." He swallowed. "They gave us wolfsbane for our claws, said it would work even though she had no wolf." Sarah's stomach tightened. "We got half the payment before the attack. The rest was promised when she was dead." "How much?" Thomas hesitated. 5,000 gold pieces each. Sarah inhaled sharply. 10,000 total. More wealth than most rogues would see in an entire lifetime. Someone wanted Sarah dead badly enough to pay a fortune. "The intermediary," Damon said. "Describe them." "Hooded, masked." Thomas hesitated. "But—" Damon stepped closer. "But what?" "I heard the accent. Northern Territories, educated, not a common pack voice. Male or female. I couldn't tell," Thomas thought. The voice was disguised. Then he frowned. "But I think it was a woman." "Why?" "The way she moved." Damon looked at Silas. Silas's expression became grim. Could be a female counselor, or someone working for one. He looked at Damon. "Counselor Vera has connections everywhere in the north. She was also one of the strongest opponents of the bond." Damon turned back to Thomas. "Anything else?" Thomas shook his head. "Anything, however small." "That's everything. I swear." Sarah finally spoke. "What about the fire?" Both rogues looked toward her. "The way it spread wasn't natural. Someone gave you an accelerant." Thomas's eyes widened slightly. "Who?" "The intermediary." "What was it?" "Biles. She called it dragon's breath." Thomas swallowed. "We poured it around the foundation before the attack." Sarah felt sick. It was supposed to burn fast enough that no one could escape. If Sarah had slept more deeply. If she had awakened minutes later. Damon cut him off. "Enough." He looked at Silas and Kira. "Return them to the cells. Their trial begins at dawn." After the prisoners were taken away, Sarah remained staring at blood on the floor. She felt hollow. Someone inside the political structure, probably the council, wanted her dead. Not merely removed. Dead. "Sarah." Damon approached gently. "You shouldn't have had to hear that." "I needed to." She looked at him. 10,000 gold pieces. Damon's jaw tightened. "That's the price someone placed on my life." Sarah's voice weakened. "And they'll keep trying." Then we keep stopping them. For how long? Damon went silent. Until someone succeeds? Sarah's eyes burned. Until you die protecting me? She shook her head. Until every person who cares about me ends up dead or ruined. Damon caught her face between his hands. Listen to me. He made her look at him. They're attacking you because they are afraid. Sarah tried to turn away. Because you represent something they cannot control. Damon refused to let her hide. Every day you remain beside me proves that everything they believe about worth and strength might be wrong. Sarah whispered. Or maybe they're right. His hands stilled. Maybe I am cursed. No. Maybe I really am bringing darkness into the realm. No. The word carried absolute certainty. You're bringing light. Damon wiped away tears Sarah had not realized were falling. You're forcing people to see the truth. That terrifies anyone who built their power on cruelty. His thumbs moved over her cheeks. I will not let them break you. Then his expression softened. And I won't let you break yourself. Sarah wanted to believe him. She wanted it desperately. But as they climbed the cellar stairs into the smoke-scented morning, Sarah could not escape the feeling that everything so far had only been the beginning. Garrett and Thomas were tried among the burned ruins of the estate. Damon deliberately held the proceedings where everyone could see what their attack had destroyed. Surviving servants and guards stood as witnesses. The trial was brief. Both rogues confessed. Too many witnesses had seen the attack for denial to matter. Damon announced the sentence. Death. The execution would take place immediately. Sarah watched Silas and Kira lead the prisoners toward 2 posts. She had never seen anyone executed. A part of her wanted to leave. Another part, the one formed by 7 years in the outskirts, forced her to stay. She needed to understand the complete cost of this world. Thomas cried. He begged for mercy. None came. Garrett remained defiant. His eyes stayed locked on Sarah. Curse you. The guards secured him. Curse you and everyone who stands with you. His hatred echoed through the ruins. The realm will burn before it accepts an abomination as queen. Damon gave the order. 2 silver-tipped arrows flew. 2 bodies went still. Justice. At least according to the laws of the realm. Sarah felt no satisfaction. Only emptiness. 2 more deaths somehow connected to her existence. Later, when the bodies had been removed, Sarah walked alone among the ruins. The main house was nothing but blackened wood and collapsed stone. The gardens where she had begun finding peace were destroyed. Sarah wandered into what remained of the library. Burned books covered the ground. Pages crumbled into ash when she touched them. She knelt and lifted what remained of a journal. Its leather cover was scorched, but 1 page could still be read. This house was built as a sanctuary. May all who enter find peace within its walls. Sarah stared. Peace. What an impossible dream. Sarah. She looked up. Silas stood nearby. The king is looking for you. His expression was difficult to read. Something happened. Sarah rose. What? The kind of thing that changes everything. Silas offered his hand. Sarah accepted it. One of the rogues had something hidden on him before the execution. Her stomach tightened. A letter. Silas continued. Sealed with the council's official wax. Sarah froze. Proof? Possibly. Damon wants you to see it. They returned to the temporary command center in the surviving guard barracks. Damon stood over a table covered in maps and papers. A letter lay in the center. His expression was darker than Sarah had ever seen. Read it. Sarah approached. The message was short, but devastating. The package would be delivered as arranged. The Omega was not to survive the night. Her continued existence threatened the stability of the realm. Once her death was confirmed, the rest of the payment would be released. The letter ended with an instruction to destroy it after reading, and a signature. V. Counselor Vera. Sarah looked up. Silas spoke quietly. This is treason. His expression remained grim. Conspiracy to murder the Alpha King's mate carries a death sentence. Damon stared at the letter. It's also what we've been waiting for. Sarah studied him. Evidence connecting the council directly to the attack. Damon nodded. Enough to arrest Vera. Enough to investigate every counselor who might be involved. When? Tonight. Sarah looked at him. We return to the palace with enough guards to stop another assassination attempt. Damon pointed at the letter. At dawn, Vera is arrested. The remaining counselors will answer questions under truth spells. Sarah's unease grew. They won't surrender quietly. Damon smiled. It was cold. Predatory. Let them resist. He looked at her. I'm finished defending. It's time they remember why the Blackwood line has ruled these territories for 3 centuries. He reached for Sarah's hand. The mate bond pulsed between them. Stronger than before. Tempered through shared fear and fire. We end this. Sarah squeezed his hand. Together. Together. But while preparations began, horses readied, weapons checked, guards assembled, one thought kept troubling Sarah. Vera was intelligent. Ruthless. Careful. Would a woman like that really leave a signed confession in the possession of hired killers? Or had they found exactly what Vera wanted them to find? They left at dusk. 30 armed guards surrounded Sarah and Damon's carriage. The trip would take nearly the entire night. They would reach the palace shortly before dawn. Perfect timing for an unexpected arrest. Damon spent hours reviewing documents and planning with Silas. Sarah watched him from across the carriage. Finally, she asked, "What if it's a trap?" Damon raised his head. "The letter," Sarah continued. "What if Vera wanted us to find it?" His expression became thoughtful. "What if she knew we'd rush back to the palace the moment we had evidence?" Sarah leaned forward. "What if she's already prepared for exactly what we're doing?" Damon remained silent for several seconds. "Then we'll adapt." Sarah frowned. "But we cannot ignore evidence of treason simply because it may be bait." Damon's voice hardened. "The council must learn that attacking you carries consequences." Sarah looked at her hands. "They already think I'm cursed." Damon watched her. Dangerous. Her voice fell. "What if they're right? Sarah, Eleanor tried to kill me and lost everything." Sarah looked toward the dark window. "The rogues who attacked the estate are dead. The staff lost their home." "Stop." Damon crossed the carriage and pulled Sarah against him. "None of those things happened because you're cursed." His hand moved through her hair. "They happened because people who fear change decided to hunt you." Damon held her tighter. "There is a difference." Sarah buried her face against his chest. "I'm scared." "I know." Damon's voice softened. "So am I." Sarah looked up. He gave a faint smile. "Fear means we still have something worth protecting." He stroked her hair. "I won't let them take you." Sarah listened to his heartbeat. "I won't let them win." The carriage rolled through the moonlit forest. Somewhere behind them stood the blackened remains of the estate. Somewhere around them, enemies were planning her death. And somewhere ahead, inside the palace Sarah had briefly considered home, waited a confrontation that might decide everything. Damon. "Yes? If something happens to me." His jaw tightened. "Nothing is going to happen. If Vera has prepared a trap and something goes wrong, I need you to promise me something." "Sarah, promise me." She pulled back. "Protect Lily." Damon stared at her. "If I'm gone, make sure she grows up safe." Sarah's voice trembled. "Make sure she's free." His eyes darkened with pain. "I promise." Then Damon took her face in his hands. "But you're going to be there." He leaned closer. "You are going to watch her grow up yourself." Sarah wanted to believe him. She wanted it so much it hurt. Instead of answering, she kissed him. Every fear she could not say went into that kiss. Every hope. every desperate wish for a future she had only recently allowed herself to imagine. Damon kissed her with equal intensity. When they separated, he rested his forehead against hers. "Whatever waits for us." His voice was quiet. "We face it together. No running. No hiding." Sarah breathed. "We fight." Damon nodded. "We fight." Outside, the night grew darker. Ahead of them stood a palace built on 300 years of power and tradition. A reckoning waited inside, one that might build a new future, or destroy everything they had begun. The war, Sarah realized, had already started. Chapter 7. The Palace Trap. They reached the palace as the first gray and rose colors of dawn spread across the horizon. Sarah expected guards to stop the convoy. She expected questions, resistance, perhaps even fighting at the gate. Instead, the palace gates were wide open, waiting. Silas sat on horseback beside the carriage. Something isn't right. His hand moved to his sword. Damon leaned toward the window. "Where are the gate guards?" His expression sharpened. "At least 20 wolves should be stationed here." The convoy moved slowly into the courtyard. Every guard remained alert, but the palace grounds were empty, not merely of soldiers, of everyone. No servants beginning the morning routine, no stable workers, no palace staff. Nothing. "It's too quiet," Sarah whispered. Every instinct told her to run. Damon reached for her hand. He squeezed once. Sarah could not tell whether the gesture meant reassurance or goodbye. "Stay inside the carriage until I say it's clear." "Damon." "Sarah." He looked at her. "Just this once." His voice softened. "Let me protect you." Before she could argue, Damon stepped outside. Silas and a dozen guards immediately surrounded him. Weapons were drawn. They advanced toward the main entrance. Then a scream came from inside the palace. A woman, terrified. The sound ended abruptly. Glass shattered. Then another scream. And another. Within seconds, dozens of voices filled the palace. Panic. Pain. "Move!" Damon roared. "Find the source. Protect the civilians." His soldiers raced inside through multiple doors. Damon turned back toward the carriage. "Sarah, I need you to." The east wing exploded. Fire and stone blasted into the sky. The shockwave shook the courtyard. Sarah was thrown against the interior wall of the carriage. Her ears rang. Her vision blurred. Through the window, she watched part of the palace collapse. Massive blocks of stone disappeared into clouds of dust and smoke. Then the rogues appeared. They poured from the palace. Dozens, perhaps hundreds. They did not attack only the royal guards. They attacked everyone. Servants ran screaming. Rogue wolves followed them. Blood already stained their fur. Sarah stared in horror. This wasn't another assassination attempt. It was a massacre. Defensive positions. Damon's command cut through the chaos. His soldiers formed lines between the rogues and fleeing civilians. Damon shifted while running. His massive black wolf crashed into the enemy with devastating force. Sarah gripped the carriage window. "Stay inside. Stay safe." That was what Damon had ordered. Then she saw a child. A girl no older than Lily stumbled from the palace. She was crying, confused. A rogue noticed her. The wolf changed direction. Easy prey. Sarah stopped thinking. She threw open the carriage door. "Hey!" She ran into the courtyard. "Over here!" The rogue's head snapped toward her. Recognition appeared instantly. The Wolfless Omega. The real target. It abandoned the child and charged Sarah. Good. The little girl now had time to run. That was enough. Sarah had no weapon. No wolf. No chance in a direct fight. The rogue launched itself toward her. Claws extended. Jaws open. A gray wolf collided with it in midair. Silas. The two wolves rolled across the courtyard. Silas was larger and better trained. The rogue fought with the frantic desperation of an animal that knew it would die regardless. Sarah backed away. She searched for the child. One of Damon's soldiers grabbed the girl and carried her toward safety. Relief flooded through Sarah. Then she saw the council. All 12 members emerged from the palace, calm, untouched, while the grounds around them burned. Tane stood at the front. His silver hair remained perfectly arranged. Satisfaction covered his face. Beside him stood Counselor Vera, smiling. Sarah's blood turned cold. "Damon!" she screamed. "It's a trap. The council." A hand seized her from behind. Another covered her mouth. Sarah fought. The grip was impossibly strong. Then a sharp scent flooded her senses. Wolfsbane. The poison spread through even Sarah's wolfless body. Her muscles weakened instantly. A woman's voice whispered near her ear. "Finally." Sarah's knees failed. The abomination is caught. She tried to scream. Nothing came. Her limbs became heavy, unresponsive. Sarah was dragged away from the courtyard. Away from the battle. Away from Damon. The last thing she saw was Damon's black wolf turning toward her. Their eyes met across the chaos. Through the bond, Sarah felt his terror, then his rage. Damon tried to reach her, but Thane stepped into his path. 11 council members moved behind him. A wall between king and mate. Sarah's vision disappeared. She woke with her cheek against cold stone. Blood filled her mouth. Sarah opened her eyes. A cell. Small. Dark. A single torch flickered outside the heavy iron door. There were no windows. Smooth stone surrounded her. Symbols had been carved across every wall. Ancient runes. Even looking at them made Sarah's skin crawl. Containment magic. Suppression. She tried to stand. Her body barely responded. Wolfsbane still moved through her system, turning each movement into a struggle. Finally, Sarah managed to push herself against the wall. "You're awake." She jerked toward the voice. Vera stood on the other side of the door. The older counselor looked almost pleasant. Friendly. That frightened Sarah more than anger would have. "Where am I?" Her voice came out rough. "The old royal dungeons." Vera smiled. "Deep below the palace." She moved closer to the barred opening. "Ancient kings kept their most dangerous prisoners here." Her smile widened. "No one will find you until we decide they should. Damon will come." "Will he?" Vera tilted her head. "At this moment, your Alpha King is probably fighting for his life against the rogues we released into the palace." Sarah's stomach dropped. Vera laughed softly. "Don't look so surprised." She folded her hands. "Did you really believe that letter was genuine evidence?" Sarah stared. It was bait. Vera's eyes gleamed. The oldest tactic in war. Give your enemy exactly what they want to discover, and they'll walk voluntarily into the trap. You wanted us back here. Of course. Vera gestured around them. The northern estate became too difficult to penetrate after our first attempts failed. Sarah's anger sharpened, and Damon became far too cautious. "So you drew us back. To territory we control." Vera nodded. "The rogue attack has several advantages." She counted them calmly. "It occupies the king while we deal with you. It proves his reforms have brought disorder. And it gives us an excellent scapegoat." Sarah felt cold. "For what?" "For your death." Vera spoke as though discussing breakfast. "The official version will be simple." She leaned closer. "Rogues invaded the palace, seeking revenge against the king. In the confusion, they captured his mate." Vera smiled. "And murdered her before he could save her. The realm will mourn you appropriately. Damon won't believe it. He'll believe the evidence we give him." Vera's eyes turned cruel. "Especially when we show him your body." She paused. "Or what remains after we're finished." Fear clawed at Sarah. She forced it down. Why? Vera frowned. Why what? Why do you hate me enough to do all of this? Vera laughed. Hate you? Her laughter echoed in the dungeon. Child, I barely consider you a person important enough to hate. Sarah's hands tightened. To me, you're simply a problem. Vera stepped nearer. A symptom of a disease spreading through a perfectly ordered world. For centuries, our structure worked. Her voice grew passionate. Alphas lead. Betas support. Omegas submit. The strong survive, the weak serve. Clean, efficient, natural. Cruel, Sarah said. Vera's expression hardened. Necessary. She gripped the door. Do you understand what happens when you begin making exceptions? Sarah remained silent. When you tell wolfless omegas they're worthy, Vera's voice rose. When you start saying strength can mean something besides tooth and claw. Her control cracked. The hierarchy collapses. Order disappears. The weak begin believing they deserve what the strong earned. Sarah looked at Vera. Then something became clear. You're afraid. Vera went still. Sarah pushed herself straighter despite the poison. That's what all of this is. You're terrified. Vera glared. If someone like me is allowed to survive, Sarah continued. If I can thrive without fitting your definition of strength, her voice hardened, then your position doesn't prove you're better than anyone. Vera slammed her palm against the door. Sarah flinched. You understand nothing, don't I? I have spent 50 years protecting the balance of this realm. Vera's voice shook with conviction. I made decisions that still haunt me, because order required them. She pointed at Sarah. Then you appeared. A worthless, wolfless omega. Her mouth twisted. You seduced the king with helplessness and theatrical sacrifice. I didn't seduce Damon. Sarah's voice remained steady. He chose me. The king made a mistake. Vera's calm returned. An understandable one. She examined Sarah. You're attractive enough. And your performance at the moon trial was certainly effective. Sarah felt disgust rise. But mistakes can be corrected. Vera smiled. And this one will be. Damon will mourn. He'll rage. But eventually he'll accept reality. Vera's voice became satisfied. Then he will choose a proper mate. Someone strong. Someone worthy to stand beside him. Sarah's fists tightened. So you're going to kill me. Eventually. The word was casual. But first we need something from you. What? A confession. Sarah almost laughed. To what? I haven't committed any crime. Oh, we prepared several. Vera raised one finger. Conspiring with rogues to overthrow the king. Another. Using dark magic to seduce him and corrupt his judgment. Another. Planning to poison the council and seize power. Sarah stared. You'll confess to all of it. No. Vera smiled. Everyone says that at first. The door opened. 2 guards entered. They carried objects that turned Sarah's blood cold. Knives, brands, other instruments she did not recognize. But their purpose was obvious. Torture. I won't confess to something I didn't do. Sarah was proud that her voice stayed steady. Vera's expression remained almost kind. Yes, you will. The pain began slowly. A shallow cut. A burn. Questions delivered in calm voices. Pain whenever Sarah refused the answer they wanted. She bit her tongue until blood filled her mouth rather than give them the satisfaction of hearing her scream. Hours passed. Perhaps longer. Inside the lightless dungeon, time stopped meaning anything. Sarah's resistance began to fracture. Just tell us what we need to hear, one guard said, almost gently. Sarah could barely see him. Say you conspired against Damon. No. Say you used dark magic. No. The pain ends the moment you say the words. Sarah's cracked lips moved. I won't lie. Another burn, this time against the mate mark on her shoulder. Sarah screamed. She could not stop it. Agony blinded her. Through the bond, something exploded. Damon. His rage answered her pain. He was alive. Still fighting. Still searching. Hold on, Sarah thought desperately. Maybe the bond could carry something between them. I'm still here. I'm still fighting. The torture continued. Then Sarah noticed something strange. Every time pain tore through her body, another sensation followed. Heat. Not the mate bond. Something different. It gathered inside her chest. Older. Deeper. Primal. Enough, Vera finally said. The guards stopped. Let her rest. Sarah collapsed. We continue tomorrow. Vera looked down at her. By then, she'll confess to anything if it means making the pain stop. The guards left with their instruments. The door closed. Sarah lay against the wall. Blood ran from wounds across her body. Burns covered her skin. Every part of her hurt. But she remained alive, and the heat inside her chest continued growing, pulse after pulse. Following the rhythm of her heart. What is happening? The torch outside the cell flickered, then died. Absolute darkness swallowed the room, and inside that darkness, something within Sarah Ashwood finally awakened. Chapter 8. The Awakening. Sarah lay curled on the stone. Her body had become a map of wounds. Yet beneath the pain, heat kept building. With every breath, it grew stronger. Alive. Powerful. For 7 years, Sarah had believed one thing about herself. She was broken, wolfless, powerless. Her own family had considered the defect so shameful that they had thrown her away. Now Sarah was bleeding on a dungeon floor, tortured and awaiting death. And finally she began understanding something Damon had tried to tell her. Maybe she wasn't powerless. Maybe her power simply looked nothing like the kind this world had learned to recognize. The heat surged. Sarah gasped. Something seemed to open inside her chest. Wings. Fire. Something for which she had no language. She pressed both palms against the stone floor. Sarah focused on the sensation. The stone beneath her hands began glowing. Faintly at first. A shimmer in the darkness. Sarah stared. As she concentrated, the glow intensified. Silver-white light spread from her skin. The darkness retreated. The runes covering the cell walls reacted. Ancient containment symbols began cracking. One line, then another. Fractures spread across them like a spider web. Sarah's eyes widened. Impossible. She had no wolf. Magic belonged to shifters. To bloodlines carrying active wolves. Yet the cell continued filling with light. The runes continued breaking. A thought rose inside Sarah. It sounded like her own voice, but older, stronger. Maybe you were never supposed to shift. Sarah's breath caught. Maybe your power was always supposed to become something else. She forced herself upright. Pain screamed through her wounds. The silver light remained. Then Sarah looked at her hands. Symbols were appearing on her skin. Not scars. Runes. They resembled the ancient marks carved into the dungeon walls. But those on Sarah were golden. They pulsed with the same heat burning through her chest. Sarah raised her hands. The containment runes reacted again. Cracks spread. Stone groaned. What are you? The frightened whisper came from outside. Sarah turned. A guard stared through the small barred window. His face had gone white. Sarah did not answer. She lifted one hand, pointed toward the iron door. The door exploded outward. It did not bend. It did not shatter normally. The metal simply dissolved into dust. The guard screamed, then ran. His footsteps disappeared down the corridor. Sarah stepped out of the cell, unsteady, bleeding, wrapped in silver-white light. Her wounds remained visible. Cuts, burns, blood. But the pain had changed. It had become connected to something powerful. The dungeon corridor stretched in several directions. Torches burned along old stone. Somewhere far above her, Sarah heard battle. The rogue attack was still happening. Damon. She needed to find him. Sarah closed her eyes. She reached toward the mate bond. It was strained by distance and ancient magic, but it remained, a thin thread of light connecting her to Damon. Sarah followed it. Above ground, the palace had become a battlefield. Damon fought in wolf form with the desperation of someone who believed the one person that mattered had been taken from him. His soldiers were losing ground against overwhelming numbers. The east wing still burned. Centuries of history disappeared into flame. Damon did not care. Only Sarah mattered. He had felt her fear when they captured her. He felt her pain during the torture. He felt her consciousness weakening. Again and again, Damon tried to reach her through the bond. Ancient magic blocked him. Then the connection suddenly erupted. Power struck Damon like lightning. His massive wolf staggered. Something had changed. Something inside Sarah. For the first time, Damon felt her power. Not wolf strength. Not ordinary shifter magic. Something older, far deeper, more complex. He felt Sarah awakening, claiming something that had always belonged to her. Damon's eyes blazed. He shifted back into human form. Then he roared one command across the battlefield. Move. Friend and enemy alike froze. Damon's guards immediately scattered from the center of the courtyard. A path opened. At that exact moment, Sarah appeared at the palace entrance. She stepped into the courtyard surrounded by silver light. Every rogue stopped. The radiance around Sarah was unlike anything any of them had seen. Shifter power carried warmth. This felt cold, ancient, terrifying. The torches fixed to the palace walls suddenly flared at once. Sarah walked forward. Then the bodies of the dead rogues began glowing. Damon stared. One corpse moved, then another. They rose. Not alive. Something else. Puppets of dead flesh, moved by Sarah's silver power. The remaining rogues looked toward their fallen companions. The corpses staggered toward them in unnatural motions. Several rogues broke instantly. They ran. Sarah descended the steps. Wherever her bare feet touched stone, silver runes spread outward across the courtyard. Damon felt his wolf recoil inside him, not from fear. Recognition. Awe. Something ancient had returned. Sarah. His voice sounded uncertain. She turned. Her eyes shone with silver light. When she answered, another resonance existed beneath her human voice. I'm here. Damon stopped breathing. Sarah looked at him. I'm still here. Then her eyes rolled backward. The light vanished. Sarah collapsed. Damon reached her before she struck the ground. Her body felt strangely light, almost as though part of her remained somewhere between physical and incorporeal. The glow faded, but the runes remained, now silver, permanently burned into her skin like living tattoos. Healer! Damon shouted. Now! Sarah barely breathed. Whatever had happened in the dungeon had demanded too much from an already tortured body. Damon pressed his forehead against hers. Hold on, please. I can't lose you now. Not like this. Through the bond, he felt the faintest presence. Sarah remained somewhere inside herself. Still fighting, Margot arrived. She took one look at Sarah and went pale. What happened to her? I don't know. Damon's voice broke. The council tortured her. Margot immediately began examining the wounds. She needs somewhere safe. Her healer's discipline took over. The palace isn't secure. Around them, Sarah's reanimated corpses began collapsing. The magic animating them faded. Many remaining rogues were retreating. Damon's guards regrouped. Margot looked at the king. Your Majesty, you have to choose. Damon stared. Defend this palace. Margot looked at Sarah. Or save her. You cannot do both right now. Damon looked toward the building he had ruled from for 15 years. Stone, gold, symbols of monarchy. None of it mattered beside Sarah's broken body. He turned to Silas. Take her to the northern sanctuary. Silas had shifted back and stood bloodied nearby. The sanctuary across the border, where Lily is staying. Damon looked at Margot. You go with her. Then back to Silas. I don't care what you have to do. His voice hardened. Keep Sarah alive. Silas nodded. What about the council? Damon's face became cold. What about Vera? I'll deal with them. He carefully lifted Sarah one final time. Damon held her against his chest. He breathed in her scent. Alive. She was still alive. Then he placed her in Silas's care. Margot left with them before dawn. Only after Sarah disappeared beyond the palace grounds did Damon turn back toward the throne room. His eyes burned gold. The Alpha King was ready to deal with traitors. The 12 council members waited before Damon's throne. Vera stood among them, confident. She watched Damon enter covered in blood. Your Majesty. Her voice remained composed. As you can see, we've successfully removed the threat to the realm. The Wolfless Omega has been. Damon grabbed her throat. Vera's feet left the floor. He held her suspended effortlessly. She's alive. Vera's face began turning purple. And she's more powerful than all of you combined. Her hands clawed at his wrist. Impossible. The word barely escaped. She's wolfless. No. Damon's eyes became molten gold. She is not wolfless. He tightened his grip. She's something none of you have words for. Something your narrow minds were incapable of recognizing. His voice became deadly calm. My wolf recognized her when she offered me her throat. Damon stared into Vera's terrified eyes. It recognized exactly what I needed. Then he threw her. Vera struck a marble column. She collapsed onto the floor, coughing. Damon faced the council. You conspired to murder my mate. No one moved. You hired rogues. You orchestrated attacks. His voice darkened. You tortured her. Several counselors went pale. For those crimes, you will answer. A younger counselor stepped forward. Damon recognized him as one of those who had opposed the mate bond but had apparently not participated directly in the assassination attempts. Your Majesty, his voice shook. We were wrong. Damon stared. We see that now. The counselor lowered his head. Please show mercy. Damon laughed. The sound carried no humor. Mercy? He stepped closer. You tortured an innocent woman. You burned my estate. You brought violence and death to the people you swore to protect. His wolf flickered in his eyes. There is no mercy for that. Damon raised his hand. Guards flooded the throne room. Take them. Every one of them. The council erupted in protest. Hold them pending trial. Damon looked across the struggling counselors. Anyone who attempts escape dies immediately. The room quieted. Anyone who interferes answers directly to me. The guards dragged the council away. Damon stood alone before his throne. He had just arrested the entire governing council. He had openly declared war on the political system that had supported Blackwood rule for 3 centuries, all because of one woman. But when Damon felt the faint pulse of Sarah's existence through their bond, he knew something with perfect certainty. He would make the same choice 1,000 times. Some things were worth burning the old world to protect. 3 days later, Damon stood outside the northern sanctuary and watched sunrise spread rose and gold across the sky. Sarah remained unconscious. Margot said recovery would take time. The power Sarah had unleashed had burned through her body like wildfire. Now her body needed to rebuild, but she was alive. The runes covering her skin glowed faintly in darkness. Margot believed the magic was settling into Sarah, becoming part of her. She's magnificent. Damon looked down. Lily stood beside him holding her stuffed rabbit. The moment she learned he had arrived, The little girl had attached herself to his side. She stared toward the room where Sarah slept with complete devotion. Yes, Damon said softly. She is. Lily looked up. Will she wake up? Damon swallowed. Yes. He hoped the word sounded more certain than he felt. Soon. Lily looked back toward Sarah's window. And then we can be a family. Damon froze. Lily's voice was hopeful. All of us. Something opened painfully inside Damon's chest. Family. He had never truly possessed one. He had stopped believing he needed one. But now there was Lily, the child whose suffering had started all of this. And Sarah, the woman who had challenged every boundary and every law to protect someone who wasn't even hers. Damon put an arm around Lily. Yes. His voice softened. Then we can be a family. Together, they watched the sunrise and waited for Sarah to come back. Chapter 9. Rebirth. Sarah woke to jasmine and honey. For several minutes she lay still. Breathing felt unfamiliar. Existing inside her own body felt unfamiliar. Pain remained. Distant memories of torture echoed through her muscles. But something else lived beneath the pain. Power. Ancient. Raw. It moved through her veins like another heartbeat. Sarah slowly opened her eyes. Sunlight fell through gauzy curtains. She was in a real bed, covered in silk sheets and surrounded by soft pillows. Every visible wound had been carefully bandaged. Beneath those bandages, silver runes glowed. The door opened. Margot entered carrying medicine and food. The healer stopped. Shock replaced her professional expression. You're awake. She quickly set down the tray. Thank the gods. Sarah tried to speak. Her throat hurt. How long? 5 days. Margot came beside the bed. We weren't sure you would. She stopped. Wake? Sarah finished. Margot nodded. Survive. The healer helped Sarah sit upright and arranged pillows behind her. What you did in that courtyard nearly consumed your body. Margot examined her carefully. I've never seen anything like it. The runes. The light. The way you moved those bodies. She shook her head. That magic wasn't anything I recognize. Sarah looked at her hands. What am I? Margot was silent. Finally, she answered honestly. I don't know. Sarah looked up. I've studied healing magic for 40 years. Margot sat near the bed. Your runes aren't shifter magic. She frowned. They feel older. Older than what? Older than the pack systems. Margot searched for the right word. Primal. Sarah stared at her palms. Even beneath the bandages, faint silver light pulsed with her heartbeat. She lifted one hand experimentally. The runes brightened. A glass of water on the nearby table began trembling. Sarah gasped. She dropped her hand. The glass stopped. Don't be afraid, Margot said. Sarah looked at her. Your magic is responding to emotion. Margot gave her a reassuring look. You'll learn control. She pushed the tray closer. But first, you need food and rest. Sarah did not feel hungry. Still, she forced herself to eat the broth and bread. With each mouthful, strength slowly returned. Not wolf strength. Something more fundamental. After Margot left, Sarah remained alone. She tried to understand what had happened underground. One moment she had been close to breaking, then something inside her had awakened. Something that felt as though it had been waiting her entire life. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Come in. The door opened. Damon entered. For a long moment, neither spoke. He looked exhausted. Dark circles rested beneath his amber eyes. He wore simple black clothes. Blood stained his hands. Not his blood. Sarah knew instinctively. You're awake. The raw relief in Damon's voice hurt more than Sarah expected. Damon. She reached toward him. He crossed the room immediately. His hand closed around hers. Gentle. Desperate. as if releasing her might make her disappear again. I'm sorry. He sank onto his knees beside the bed. Sarah frowned. I should have protected you. Damon's voice cracked. I should have seen the trap. Stop. Sarah squeezed his hand. You did everything you could. Not enough. More than anyone could have asked. She looked at him. And you found me. Damon shook his head. You found yourself. He lifted Sarah's hand and kissed her palm near the brightest rune. What happened in that courtyard? His eyes searched hers. I've never witnessed anything like it. You terrified every rogue still standing. Sarah looked down. I don't know what I am. Neither do I. Damon touched her fingers. But I know what I felt. Sarah waited. When your power awakened, I felt it through our bond. His eyes burned intensely. What did you feel? Completion. Sarah went still. My wolf recognized that power the same way it recognized you. Damon's voice softened. As if pieces of something finally fit together. Sarah wanted to accept his certainty, but doubt remained. The council will call it dark magic. Damon's expression hardened. They'll say I'm cursed. Let them. His smile became fierce. The council is in chains. Sarah stared. All of them? Waiting for trial. Damon nodded. Vera confessed under truth spell. He watched Sarah carefully. She coordinated everything. The poisoning, the estate attack, the trap, the torture. Relief came, but it did not feel simple. Sarah had wanted the truth. She had wanted justice. Yet the thought of Vera and the others waiting in cells for execution left something uncomfortable inside her. What happens now? They stand trial. Damon did not pretend otherwise. The evidence is overwhelming. He paused. Most of them will probably be executed for treason and attempted murder. Sarah lowered her eyes. Damon noticed. That bothers you. Sarah struggled to explain. They tried to kill me. She remembered Vera. They tortured me. She remembered the estate. They killed innocent people. Every word was true. Still, Sarah remembered Vera explaining why. Fear. Fear of change. Fear of losing control. Fear of a world no longer matching everything she believed. I don't want them dead. Damon stared. Sarah continued quietly. I want them to understand. Sarah, I want them to understand why they were wrong. Damon sat back. That's not how justice works here. Maybe that's part of the problem. His eyes narrowed slightly. Traitors die. That's the law. Then maybe the law should change. Damon simply stared. Then he began laughing. A real laugh. Sarah frowned. What? You're unbelievable. He shook his head. 5 days ago, those people tortured you almost to death. Damon looked at her in wonder. Anyone else would demand vengeance. Sarah met his gaze. They didn't invent a culture that worshipped cruelty. They were raised inside it. Sarah thought of her own life. Vera was trapped by that system too. Damon remained silent. The way I was trapped by being wolfless. She touched his hand. The way you might have been trapped by believing an alpha king had to rule through fear. Damon moved closer. He carefully held her face. When you're healed, his expression became serious. We're going to remake the realm. Sarah's breath caught. You and me. Damon's thumb moved across her cheek. We change the laws. We challenge the traditions. We build something better. Sarah swallowed. What if I'm not strong enough? The fear escaped before she could stop it. Damon's answer was immediate. You stood before the most powerful alphas alive and told them their world was broken. He leaned closer. You survived torture without giving them the confession they wanted. His eyes burned gold. You awakened a form of magic everyone believed impossible for a wolfless Omega. Damon's voice softened. Sarah, you're the strongest person I've ever met. She shook her head slightly. Not because you have claws. He continued. Not because you can shift. Because you refuse to become what other people try to make you. Damon kissed her. Gentle. Reverent. The mate bond warmed between them. But this time Sarah understood that what connected them was no longer only magic. Trust had grown there. Choice. Recognition. When the kiss ended, Sarah rested her forehead against his. I'm scared. So am I. Damon smiled faintly. But now we're afraid together. His fingers tightened around hers. And that changes everything. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood in the garden of the sanctuary. Her body had healed far faster than Margot expected. The healer believed the runes accelerated Sarah's natural recovery. The wounds disappeared. The marks remained. Silver lines crossed Sarah's skin and glowed more brightly whenever she used power. She practiced constantly, testing boundaries, learning control. Sarah discovered she could move objects with thought. She could close wounds by touching them. She could perceive energies invisible to other wolves. Magic. Life. Hidden currents flowing through the world around her. And she could feel emotion, not thoughts. Nothing as invasive as mind reading. But Sarah sensed pain. Fear. Joy. Anger. The ability made one instinct stronger than all the others. She wanted to help. You're improving. Sarah turned. A woman stood behind her. Sarah had never seen her before. She was tall and lean, with silver hair arranged in an elaborate braid. Her eyes gave off a faint golden light. The robes around her seemed to shift between solid fabric and something almost translucent. Everything about her felt otherworldly. Who are you? Some part of Sarah already sensed the answer mattered. My name is Ara. The woman smiled. I'm a keeper. Sarah stared. One of an ancient order responsible for guarding the old magic. Ara's smile became sad. I've been watching you, Sarah Ashwood. Why? Because your awakening was not an accident. Sarah's pulse quickened. You were always meant to carry this power. Ara hesitated. Your mother? My mother? Pain flashed through Sarah. She had buried thoughts of that woman years ago. Your mother was also descended from keepers. Sarah stared. She never awakened? No. Ara shook her head. The magic skipped her generation. She looked at Sarah's runes. It remained dormant inside the bloodline. Then why was I born without a wolf? Because the old magic required a vessel. Ara's voice softened. A form not restricted by ordinary shifter power. Sarah's mind reeled. So everyone thought I was broken because they didn't understand what you were. Why didn't anyone know? Ara's expression darkened. Keepers have remained hidden for centuries. She walked through the garden. We watched from the shadows because others wanted to control or destroy the old magic. Sarah followed. The council knew? Yes. Ara stopped. They feared us. Sarah's blood cooled. For generations, powerful members of the old system suppressed individuals, showing signs that keeper magic might awaken. Ara looked into Sarah's eyes. When you failed to shift, they believed the bloodline had been neutralized. Sarah's hands curled. But I survived. Ara smiled. You did far more than survive. Flowers suddenly bloomed around them. Sarah stared. You awakened. Ara extended one hand toward the garden. You claimed the power they feared. Her expression became serious. Now the important question is, what you'll do with it. Sarah did not hesitate. Help people. Ara watched her. Protect those who can't protect themselves. Sarah thought of Lily. Change the laws that make powerless people easy to exploit. Ara smiled. The Alpha King chose well. Sarah glanced away. Together, perhaps the two of you really can remake this realm. What will you do? Ara's expression changed. My order will come out of hiding. Sarah stared. We'll help you. Ara extended her hand. We'll teach you how to control your abilities." Her golden eyes glowed. "And when those loyal to the old system resist, we'll stand with you, if you'll accept us." Sarah took Ara's hand. Power flowed between them. Old, deep, purposeful. "I'll accept you." Sarah smiled. "We're going to need every ally we can find." That evening, Damon arrived with news. The council trials had started. One after another, the councillors were being brought before a special court. Evidence of treason, conspiracy, murder, and torture became public. Then Sarah made a request Damon strongly opposed. She wanted to meet Vera. "She tortured you," Damon said. His jaw tightened. "She tried to murder you more than once." "I know. You owe that woman nothing. I'm not going there to forgive her." Damon studied Sarah. "Then why?" "I want to show her something." The meeting happened inside a secure room in the capital's justice building. Vera entered in chains. Her once immaculate appearance was gone. Her hair was unkempt. Gray prison clothing replaced the elegant garments she once wore. The moment Vera saw Sarah, hatred twisted her face. "The abomination." Sarah remained calm. "Come to enjoy yourself before they execute me." "No." Sarah lifted her hand. "I came to show you something." The runes flared. Silver light filled the room. Before Vera, an image began forming. Not a memory. A possible future. A realm where wolfless omegas lived openly. Where they worked. Created. Healed. Contributed. A realm where strength included intelligence, compassion, creativity, courage. A realm where no one was thrown into the outskirts simply because their body worked differently. Vera stared. Through her new ability, Sarah felt the counselor's emotions. Fear, grief, despair. "This is what terrified you." Vera did not respond. "A world where someone like me could exist without apologizing for it." Sarah lowered her hand slightly. "A world where your definition of strength wasn't the only one allowed." "It's chaos," Vera whispered. "No." Sarah let the vision disappear. "It's change." Vera stared at her. "And I'm giving you another choice." "What?" "Tell the truth at trial." Sarah stepped closer. "Explain what drove the council. Explain your fear. Help the realm understand how that fear became violence." Vera's face remained suspicious. "And, in return, I'll ask the court for mercy." Vera's eyes widened. "Exile instead of execution." Shock replaced hatred. "Why?" Sarah waited. "Why would you offer mercy after everything I did to you?" "Because killing you won't automatically create a better world." Sarah turned toward the door. "But understanding what created you might help us prevent it from happening again." Vera remained silent. "The choice is yours." Sarah looked back. "But understand this." Her voice became firm. "The old world is ending. You can help build what replaces it." Sarah met Vera's eyes. "Or cling to the past until it destroys you." Sarah left. Vera never answered. But before the door closed, Sarah felt something through her empathic power. The anger remained. The fear remained. But there was something new beneath them. A crack. A small fracture inside Vera's certainty. Maybe that would be enough. Maybe not. Sarah had begun learning that true change did not always come from destroying the people who resisted it. Sometimes it came from showing them something better, then trusting that enough people would choose it. Chapter 10. The New Dawn. 1 year later, the palace had been rebuilt, but it was no longer a monument to the old style of power. Gardens broke up the rigid architecture. Open courtyards invited people inside. The throne room had been redesigned with large windows that allowed natural light across the marble, and carved through those floors were runes identical to those on Sarah's skin, symbols of old magic incorporated directly into the foundation of a new realm. Sarah stood in one of the palace gardens. Lily ran through wildflowers, chasing butterflies. The child had changed enormously in a year, not only taller, happier, confident. Safe. For the first time in Lily's young life, she knew she belonged somewhere. She's beautiful. Sarah turned. Vera approached. The older woman no longer wore prison clothing. Her clothes were simple but dignified. Vera had ultimately chosen exile over execution, but not the exile Sarah originally imagined. After testifying, Vera had chosen to remain and spend her life helping repair the systems she once defended. The decision had been controversial. Many wolves demanded her death. Sarah fought for another form of justice, restoration instead of simple punishment. For the rest of her life, Vera would work to undo damage she had helped create. She helped integrate wolfless omegas into pack society. She publicly challenged prejudices she herself had cultivated for decades. In some ways, it was a harder sentence than death. She is, Sarah said, watching Lily. I still can't believe how much she's grown. Children have a habit of doing that. Vera watched Lily quietly. Then she spoke. I've thought often about what you told me. Sarah glanced at her. About the old world ending. Have you accepted it? Vera sighed. I'm learning. Regret weighed heavily in her voice. I spent most of my life building walls. Sarah listened. Deciding who belonged on which side. Building structures that made me feel powerful and in control. Vera looked at Sarah. Then a wolfless omega appeared who refused every category I understood. Her eyes lowered. I couldn't accept you. I know. I saw you as a threat. Vera's voice roughened. Not a person. Sarah surprised herself by answering. I understand. Vera looked at her. Fear can make people do terrible things. Understanding that doesn't erase what I did. No. Sarah did not soften it. It doesn't. Vera's face tightened. I tortured you. Yes. That cannot simply be forgiven. No. Sarah met her gaze. But it can be worked through. She gestured toward the palace. You're doing that every day when you help people harmed by the system you defended. Vera slowly nodded. Damon told me you're opening a sanctuary here in the capital. For wolfless omegas. A place where they can discover what they are capable of without fear. Sarah smiled slightly. With your help. Vera looked surprised. If you're willing. Sarah stepped closer. You understand the prejudice we're fighting from the inside. Her voice remained calm. That makes you useful in defeating it. For several seconds, Vera looked ready to refuse. Then she lowered her head. Yes. Her voice was quiet. I'll help. That evening, Sarah met Damon inside their private chambers. The last year had changed him too. There were more lines around his face. The reforms placed new weight on his shoulders. But his amber eyes still carried the same fierce determination Sarah had first seen beneath the blood moon. The new council confirmations passed, Damon said as he dropped into a chair near the fire. Sarah sat beside him. Balanced? Equal representation. Damon nodded. Alphas, betas, omegas. And the wolfless legislation? Formalized. He leaned back. Full legal rights throughout recognized Blackwood territory. Sarah exhaled. How many of the previous political leaders refused to participate? 7. Damon's smile was bitter. They chose voluntary exile rather than live under a government where omegas hold equal authority. Sarah squeezed his hand. Some traditions don't die easily. No. She laced their fingers. But they're dying. Damon looked at her. That matters. It does. He lifted Sarah's hand and kissed the runes along her wrist. During the previous year, those marks had spread. They now covered her arms and shoulders. Intricate lines spiraled down her back. Each rune seemed connected to someone Sarah healed, or some wrong she helped correct. Her skin had become a map of her journey. Ara told me something today. Damon glanced up. What? Other keepers are awakening. His expression sharpened. Where? Across the realm. Sarah's voice carried wonder. Other wolfless people are beginning to access power now that the old magic is no longer being suppressed. Damon pulled her closer. You opened a door no one can close. Sarah rested against him. The world is changing. Are you afraid? Damon considered the question. Terrified. Sarah laughed softly. But not in the way I used to understand fear. He looked toward the fire. It's the fear you feel when you're standing at the edge of something completely unknown. Damon kissed her hair. The kind that reminds you you're alive. Sarah listened to his heartbeat. The mate mark on her neck pulsed gently. Their bond had deepened over the past year. What began as supernatural instinct had become love built through shared choices. Sarah stood suddenly. Come with me. She pulled Damon toward the window. From the palace they could see the capital below. It had changed. New sanctuaries were under construction. Libraries studied the old magic openly. Hospitals brought ordinary healers like Margot together with keepers to explore entirely new forms of medicine. The rigid hierarchy had begun collapsing. Not instantly, not everywhere, but person by person, choice by choice. It's beautiful, Damon whispered. Sarah smiled. It's messy, he laughed. There's still resistance. She looked toward the city. Some packs refuse to recognize the new laws. Some alphas have become even more traditional because they're frightened. We haven't finished. No. Damon wrapped an arm around her. But we're winning. Sarah looked at him. Slowly. Slowly. Damon smiled. But we're winning. 3 months later, Sarah visited the newly opened sanctuary for awakening keepers. A 16-year-old wolfless omega named Maya stood in the training hall. Her hands shook as she concentrated on a stone. Then the stone rose from the floor. Maya gasped. A dozen young omegas watching nearby reacted with disbelief and excitement. These were children who had once been called defective. Cast-offs. Unwanted. Now they were discovering the truth. They had never been broken. They were different. Ara moved among the students. Her knowledge of ancient magic became invaluable as more keepers appeared. After centuries in hiding, the old order stepped into the light. They're amazing. Sarah turned. Lily stood beside her. The little girl was now 7 and visited the sanctuary whenever she could. She loved watching new keepers discover their abilities. Sarah suspected Lily recognized something of her own journey in them. They are. Sarah took her hand. Do you remember the alley where I found you? Lily nodded. I remember. Her fingers tightened around Sarah's. I was scared. Sarah smiled. And then you came. Lily looked at the young keepers. Now we're saving other people. Yes. Sarah's voice softened. That's how change happens. One person. One choice. One act of courage at a time. The old moon trial site had also changed. The standing stones remained, but the clearing was no longer used for judgment or death. It had become a memorial. Names were carved into the stones. Every person investigators could identify as having been wrongfully condemned under the old system. Hundreds, then thousands. A permanent record of lives sacrificed to unjust law. One evening, Sarah stood in the center of that circle. The full moon rose above the capital. Exactly 1 year had passed since Sarah knelt on this same ground. 1 year since she exposed her throat and prepared to die. Penny for your thoughts? Damon came beside her. He took her hand. Sarah looked around. I was thinking about how much can change because of one decision. Damon smiled. Your decision. Our decisions. You chose Lily first. Damon counted softly. You chose to challenge the council. You chose mercy when revenge would have been easier. He looked at her. All of this started because of your choices. Sarah shook her head. Not mine alone. She squeezed his hand. You chose to mark me when everyone expected you to kill me. Damon watched her. You chose me again when the entire council told you I was unworthy. Her voice became softer. You chose to change a system that had existed for 300 years. Damon pulled her into his arms. They swayed beneath the moon. Below them, the capital glowed. Some lights came from lamps. Others were the gentle silver radiance of keeper magic now woven through the city. I love you, Damon said. Simple, certain. Sarah smiled. I love you too. And she did. Not because supernatural magic demanded it. Not because fate had forced two people together. Sarah loved him because Damon had seen worth in her during a time she struggled to see it herself. Because he had chosen her deliberately. Again and again. Music drifted from the city. A celebration marked the anniversary of the moon trial that had transformed the realm. Sarah thought of Vera, working with the sanctuary to integrate Wolfless Omegas. She thought of Eleanor, who had been given mercy instead of execution and was working to rebuild trust with those she betrayed. She thought of the council members who chose exile rather than reform. She thought of every young keeper discovering power they had been told could not exist. Every Wolfless Omega who could no longer legally be owned. Every life saved because someone had challenged a system everyone else had accepted. What are you thinking now? Damon asked. Sarah looked toward the full moon. That strength isn't about never breaking. Damon waited. It's being willing to break. Sarah looked at him. And then choosing to rebuild yourself into something stronger and more honest. Damon smiled. Then kissed her beneath the moon. The bond between them sang with warmth and completion. The old world was ending. The new one was only beginning. Sarah Ashwood had once been known only as the Wolfless Omega. Now she was an awakened keeper, the woman standing beside the Alpha King. The woman preparing to help guide an entire realm toward compassion instead of cruelty, acceptance instead of judgment, love instead of fear. The Omega who had once offered her throat for a starving child had become something no one expected, a symbol of hope. Epilogue. 3 years later, Sarah Ashwood's coronation took place on a clear spring morning. Flowers bloomed across the capital. Keepers threaded ancient magic through stone, wood, and air. Sarah did not wear a traditional crown of gold and jewels. Her crown was made from silver light. Her own power shaped into a symbol of the reign she was about to begin. Her gown was white and silver. Runes like those across her skin were embroidered through the fabric. Nothing about Sarah's appearance tried to hide what she had once been told was wrong with her. It celebrated it. Damon stood beside her. His hand remained wrapped around hers as the High Keeper approached. Then the crown of silver light settled onto Sarah's head. The crowd roared, not with fear, not with submission, recognition, hope. Thousands of people looked toward a ruler in whom they could finally see something of themselves. Lily stood in the front row. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She held flowers she had grown herself, using magic that had awakened during the previous 3 years. Lily, too, had discovered keeper blood. Another wolfless child who had once been called unwanted now carried old magic. Vera stood among other reformed political leaders. Her expression held complicated emotion as she watched the woman she had once tortured become queen. The realm was different now. Laws had been rewritten. Entire institutions had been dismantled. Others had been rebuilt. Resistance still existed. Some territories continued clinging to old beliefs. But the momentum had changed. The future now belonged to those willing to imagine something different. Later, Damon and Sarah walked together through the palace. Hand in hand. Queen Sarah Ashwood thought about the 16-year-old girl standing alone beneath a full moon. Wolfless, rejected, certain she was broken. She thought of the alley, of Lily, of one decision to stop when survival told her to keep walking, one decision to protect a child no one else wanted. That single choice had changed everything. Sarah smiled. Sometimes the smallest act of courage echoes farther than anyone can imagine. Sometimes one person's refusal to surrender can reshape an entire world. Sometimes the person everyone calls weakest carries the power capable of transforming everyone around them. And sometimes an Omega offering her throat in sacrifice becomes the beginning of salvation. Sarah's story had begun with a moon trial, a wolfless Omega willing to die so a child could live free. It ended at a coronation, a queen beginning her reign with one promise, at the center of everything she intended to build. No one in her realm would ever again be forced to make that choice. Between those two moments, almost everything had changed. And that, Sarah realized, had been the greatest transformation of all.